Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. How y'all doing, my friends? My name is Dave Scott. Glad to have you all with us as we kick off this Thursday night show. Mark Gober, our guest. Are we alone in the universe? He's got a brand new book out we're going to talk about called An End to Upside Down Contact, UFOs, Aliens, and Spirits, and Why Their Ongoing Interaction with Human Civilization Matters. Yes, it's going to be a gem of a night tonight. Dirty Filth is here with the art. But first, let's say hello to everyone in the audience so far on YouTube. Race Fan in the gold medal position. We got Nightmare taking home the silver. Roy Boy with a nice bronze medal tonight. Awesome Man B, D. Cohen, Awesome Man Palmer. The lovely Donna Spencer is here. Donna Spencer will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio if you don't mind. To the left of the studio. The lovely Jenny, how are you? John Hinojosa, nice to see you. One of our favorite veterans, Black Dragon, is here. The former Marine, we love you. Thank you for your service. Veterans always have a safe home here in our Spaced Out Radio chat room. Moving on here, we got John Hinojosa. We have Rui Gonzalez from Portugal. Hello, Rui. How are you, buddy? Luscious Jules, nice to see you. As we continue on with roll call tonight. And who is next? Well, let's take a little bit of a look here. Well, it's Haley. Hallie is back. Yep, he's a good man. Lovely Lisa Compton, how are you? Nice to see you. And who else is here? Well, the gorgeous Trisha. How are you? Thank you for joining us. And 405er, nice to see you. Bigfoot, Michigan Rob, how's the bandanas? What color are you wearing tonight? Please let us know. And who else do we got here? Well, let's continue on with roll call, shall we? And we'll find out together. EMF, you're unbelievable. Oh, there we go. And Alien Critter, nice to have you back. Along with Ozzy, oi, oi to you. Another great veteran listening to the show, Dennis Zuniga. How are you, my friend? Thank you for joining us. Goth White, Mr. Lurks-a-Lot, good to see you both. And Northern California Cubs fan, 2 nights in a row. Thanks for joining us. Dirty Filth in the chat room as well. And who else do we have here? A Muse is here. A Muse will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, to the right of the studio. Moving on here, Digger Dog, thanks for joining us. Arlen Forest People, looking lovely tonight, and we are caught up so far in the chat room. Eddie Haskell, good to see you. And I think that's about it so far. Vapid Engage, welcome to SOR chat. Thank you. You're working, but listening in. Good to have you here, and we'll try and keep it entertaining so we keep you awake tonight. The gorgeous Suzanne is back. Yes, that's like almost 2 weeks in a row she has been here every single night. Invisible Tracker, thanks for coming on in. And we got about a minute to go here before we are going to launch tonight's show. Remember, a great way to support what we do is through the Super Chat. And the Super Chat is a wonderful way to support what we do on a nightly basis. So we really do appreciate the love and support that you as a listening audience give us, along with the fact that you could go to our store, spacedoutradio.com, on our website, get yourself some really cool swag. And yeah, that's kind of all I got. There's my advertising for the night. The gorgeous Michelle Labigan, how are you? Thank you for joining us. as we are just moments away from launching here. We got about 40 seconds. Let me see here. I'm going to take this. There we go. And the lovely Caroline Start. Nice to see you. I got these little flies all around, driving me absolutely bonkers. There's like about a dozen of them. They're going to drive me nuts. They're absolutely going to drive me nuts. Bobbert, how are you? Good to see you tonight, Bobbert. My brother Eugene in Philly. How are you, my friend? And love you, man. And seconds. Super chat open. Bombshell Bomber, welcome back. And we're about to launch here. I'm excited about tonight's show. And we're going to do it like 5 seconds. So if you're ready, I'm ready. And you guys know what to do. Let's do this thing, shall we? Horns up. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out the Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We got a great show going on for you tonight. Mark Gober is here. He's going to answer questions as to whether or not we are alone in the universe. Then in hour number 3, we got a great story from the swamp, courtesy of Swamp Dweller. Super Duke brings in the cryptid report. I've got the Dave 101. Shirky Poo has the news. Are we alone? Yeah, it's a big question, isn't it? The answer, according to Mark Gober's An End to Upside Down Contact, is a resounding no. Humans exist among a variety of advanced species, sometimes identified as aliens, spirits, beings of light, and beyond. In fact, our civilization seems to be regularly influenced by such non-human intelligences, even if we're not always aware of them. Near-death experiences and other phenomena of consciousness reveal that some species exist in other dimensions that our eyes cannot ordinarily see. Similarly, UFOs and alien abductions, which were examined by the former head of psychiatry at Harvard, provide additional evidence that we are not alone. And if you head over to his website, markgober.com, that's Gober, .com, we're going to learn a lot tonight about an end to upside down contact. Mark Gober, welcome to Spaced Out Radio for the first time. Good to have you here, my friend. Thank you for joining us.
Dave, thank you for having me.
All right, let's get into it. What makes you all of a sudden come out of nowhere? You're an educated guy running around the United States trying to figure out a place to live, a good vagabond kind of guy, and here you are writing about whether or not we're alone in the universe and if we've ever been alone. That's a pretty deep topic to tick off the old list there, Mark.
Yes. Well, let me take you back to how this came about, because it's not something I ever expected. For my undergrad college, I went to Princeton University, and I wasn't thinking about aliens there. Although thinking back to that period, I was considering astrophysics as a major because I took a class in it and I was really interested in the broader universe. So I guess the interest was always within me, but I went into business. So I used to work in investment banking. I was there in New York in 2008 when I graduated. So during the financial crisis, working in New York, and then I moved out to Silicon Valley, advising technology companies. So on the surface, nothing to do with contact or whether or not we're alone in my professional life. And my interest in these big questions really took hold in 2016 while I was still working at my firm in Silicon Valley. I was listening to podcasts. That's how it started. And I heard on a health podcast a woman talk about psychic phenomena and her abilities to communicate with beings in other dimensions. And she spoke about it in a very serious way. So long story short, I started to just listen to other podcasts like that. And then I started to read scientific papers and read books about this and realized that my worldview was totally off base. So that's led me down a path of eventually leaving my job. And now I've written 4 books and produced a podcast series, all related to trying to understand the nature of reality. And this 4th book is about contact, which is tied to my other books, but I'm really asking big questions overall.
What are some of those questions that are really driving you nuts? What answers do you want?
Ultimately, I want to understand who we are and why we exist. Because unless we know the answers to those questions, it's hard to know how to live life.
As short as that answer was, that's a pretty heavy answer. It really is. I mean, that's like, going up and finding heaven and going to God. Hey, what's this life stuff all about, man? Like, what's going on here? What did you do to us? I mean, there's so many different ways that can go. And I think, being transfixed on that question, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, well, I was in a place prior to 2016 where I thought I had the answer, which was life is meaningless. I thought we lived in a random universe, and that's what science was teaching us. The more we learned about science, the more that spiritual or religious ideas were just fantasy and superstition. So I was in that mindset of nihilism, really. Life's meaningless. And then I came across this other information and scientific evidence for it. And I realized whatever I thought before was wrong. I don't know the answer to what's right, but I was wrong before. I need to rethink my whole worldview. And to me, our worldview, whatever we hold that to be, drives our values and our decisions and priorities in life. And that's what I'm trying to get at.
On a personal level, Mark, how has seeking this answer changed you as a human being? I know a lot of bankers. Okay, I know a lot of people in the financial district, and one of my best friends growing up in my 20s, God bless him, he took care of me when I needed some help, and but the drive and the understanding of finances and money and investment can be all consuming. For you to do a complete flip 180, I mean, how did you do that? How have you changed?
Yeah, I've changed in a big way. And when I went into finance, starting right out of undergrad, it wasn't because I was just so interested in doing investment banking. It was just a lot of my classmates were doing that in college. And it was just, it seemed like a very secure way to start a career. So I just got on that path and I stuck with it because I didn't know what else I was going to do. And in 2016, when I came across this other information, I realized that there was a lot of evidence suggesting that life has fundamental meaning built into it. So let me give an example. One of the most impactful things I've learned in all my research in near-death experiences, for example, this is when a person is in cardiac arrest, their brain is barely functioning or it's completely off. And yet when they come back in their body, they report otherworldly things. They talk about being immersed in unconditional love, for example. Sometimes they see things from above their body, like an out-of-body experience, which is validated by the doctors or other family members in the room when they're resuscitated, meaning it's not a hallucination. And one of the other things they report often, 20 to 30% of these cases, it's called a life review. People relive their life in a very short amount of time. But the kicker here is that they relive the events not only through their own eyes, but they become all the people that they impacted. And they get to feel what it was like to be harmed in some way, or to be, let's say, loved. You get to feel how you treated other people. And actually, for my podcast called Where Is My Mind, I interviewed a man named Daniel Brinkley, who's had this happen 4 times. He was struck by lightning, open heart surgery twice, brain surgery once. And he had to relive his combat days in Vietnam, where he felt what it was like to be the person that he killed. But he also felt the pain of children who no longer had a father because he had killed the father in combat. So when people have these experiences and come back and relay them, they say their life changes completely. Sometimes they change their jobs, they get divorced because their priorities shift. So when I take that information in, it's just one data point out of many, it suggests that what we're doing in our daily lives matters in a very big way. Whereas I didn't think that before. So that alone has completely shifted me.
Yeah, Danny and Brinkley has an amazing life. I mean, he for a long time he was proud to be a bully. He was proud to be that tough guy that everybody feared. You know, almost like a mob hitman type of thing. And then when he had his experiences, I mean, it's been amazing. We've heard hundreds of stories like that over time with people in near death experiences. And are you, as you have looked into this now and you're kind of tackling all the subjects, are you of the belief that it is all one phenomena that we are experiencing at the same time, or is it different phenomena happening at the same time?
That's a great question, Dave. Let me tell you my worldview. This is where I land based on the research over the last 6 years and 4 books into this. And I say this is my tentative worldview because as new data comes in, it can always shift. I think consciousness, which is our sense of being able to experience, it's our subjective awareness. We all have it. Consciousness is not something that comes from the body or the brain, but rather the brain is like an antenna, receiver, transmitter, or more precisely, it's like a filtering mechanism, meaning there's this broader reality that our brain actually blocks out like a blindfold. And when a near-death experience happens, for example, the brain gets out of the way and this broader reality exists. An analogy I like to use comes from a philosopher named Dr. Bernardo Kastrup. He says that all reality is like a stream of water, or that stream of water represents consciousness. And each of us is a whirlpool within that stream, meaning it seems like we're individuals, but we're fundamentally interconnected as part of this one consciousness. Now, to your question, is everything one phenomenon? I would say yes and no. And it's paradoxical because at one level, we're all one consciousness. And at that level, there's no separation. So there couldn't possibly be more than one phenomenon. But at the level at which we perceive from our bodies, where there's a Mark and a Dave and each person's individual, we're perceiving duality and separation. So at that level, the oneness is manifesting in different ways. So to me, the near-death experience is one type of manifestation within that lens of duality.
And a lot of people will say that, you know, this goes a long ways. And I know people who are studying this right now, I mean, who believe that the phenomena is actually everything. And that's why the word phenomena has become more of a noun than a verb. You know, I mean, it's a great title for what is going on around us. And the fact that most people on this planet are blind or naive to it is kind of an interesting concept, considering all life seems to revolve around it.
That's one of the hardest things when I talk to people about this subject matter. These are things that they might not have experienced directly, or if they ever have, it might be a subtle synchronicity or something. But what I'm describing is suggesting that what we live in and perceive on a daily basis is like a special case of something much broader. Whereas people usually think it's the reverse, that we live in the general case and maybe there's some anomalies here and there. I think it's the opposite of that.
And I would think that you are on that path. You know, I know my path in 7.5 years of doing this show has changed numerous times. And, you know, I remember at the beginning where I never thought that the paranormal was the same as UFOs and ET contact and cryptids and consciousness. But I fast forward to now, and that's where I'm standing, as the phenomena is all one. For you, you know, because we're going to get heavy into this throughout the show tonight. How did the people around you react to this change of pace? What did mom and dad say, if they're still with us? Or what did your family members or friends say, wondering if you went off the deep end?
Well, I've been fortunate that people around me have been supportive, friends and family, and even my colleagues, because I was still working at the time that I wrote my first book. It's called An End to Upside Down Thinking. And that book is all about the evidence that the brain does not produce consciousness. So it's the scientific evidence of psychic phenomena like telepathy, psychokinesis, remote viewing. and also the science suggesting that our consciousness survives bodily death, like near-death experiences, children with past life memories, mediumship. So I was covering a lot of paranormal stuff in that book. But because I was still working and I was so new to this area and was timid in a way to talk to people about it, because most people around me don't think about these things. It was a very scientific book where everything is cited by a scientific paper and professor from, the University of Virginia, all over the place. And so I tried to bring credibility to an area that's often considered taboo, but there's actually a lot of strong scientific research. And I think because I had that approach, people were receptive. I wasn't just saying, oh, so-and-so just claimed that this is real. I'm looking at what the scientists say. And that was a segue into getting into the more out there stuff.
So there was nobody who was a little bit afraid of what you'd turn into, that maybe, you lost your mind after university?
Most people were supportive, but there were definitely people who, in trying to look out for me, said, Mark, you shouldn't do this. Like, this is crazy. You're on a good path with your career. This scientific stuff you're looking at, it's bogus science. You really should not do this. So there was a little bit of that. And I just had so much conviction because of what I was doing in my research. And then I also started to have some not contact experiences, but strange experiences with synchronicities that were very difficult to explain with my rational mind, where things were recurring in my life that were just so bizarre. And then also I worked with psychics and energy healers. I wanted to experiment with the things that I was researching. And sometimes those people were able to do things that I couldn't explain. So when you combined all of it together, I knew I had to go in this direction no matter what people said.
What did you learn going through that process? What did you learn about yourself, your own spirituality, your own consciousness and being?
I think it's ongoing, trying to understand who I really am. And what I learned initially was that whatever I thought I was incomplete. And I still feel that way. But I feel at this point on the journey, more clarity. I have this sense that we are more than our body, and therefore there is meaning in our life, and there are things that we can do to contribute. So that's why I write these books. I mean, I was on a very secure career path that I just left. I mean, I became a partner, and then in 2019, after I'd written my first book and did the podcast, I said, I need to go full time on this. And I've written 3 more books since then. But I really feel the sense of service, the importance of that. And before this period, I always wanted to treat people well, but there was no deeper meaning behind that. And so maybe what I learned about myself is that there might have been a part of me that knew that that our interactions have some meaning beyond what we're told, but I couldn't put a finger on it. And now that I've done research, there's scientific backing to it.
Right. Well, hey, at least you get to throw the UFOs in the faces of those that didn't like you or didn't want you to make a change, thought you were being foolish. And now you look at everywhere, it's UFOs everywhere, and there isn't any way to get away from that now.
Yeah, I think it lends credibility to this topic. And I mean, the timing of my book. And also, I mean, I always wonder why I become interested in something. Like, where does a creative idea come from? What's being implanted telepathically? Because I haven't had a direct contact experience that I'm aware of, at least. But it is curious timing, because I had written my 3rd book, actually came out last fall, and it was applying these consciousness ideas to political and economic theory. So pretty different than contact. Although in that book, I did contemplate, I said, there is all this evidence that other beings exist. I didn't go into all of it. How might that interplay with our world and our political structure? So I contemplated it, but to go so quickly from that to a whole book on contact, which came out under a year later, there was something pulling me in that direction. And it happens to coincide with a lot of public revelations.
We got 5 minutes to go before we got to go to break in the bottom of the hour. Mark Gober is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Mark, you mentioned something there that really piqued my interest, and that was, the financial aspects of any sort of contact. And in talking with Luis Elizondo and others about this, that is actually one of the giant concerns at the Pentagon regarding how people and the financial system are going to react if disclosure happens, if aliens arrive. What is your take on that?
Well, it seems to me, without being an insider or anything, it seems like there's been a slow drip of information, and it feels like a warming up process, so that if there is something more major that happens, people will at least have been primed with congressional hearings, for example. And now they're putting much more attention on trying to track these, what they call anomalous phenomena in the sky. So I think it's lending credibility and warming people up. That's just my sense, because I do agree, if there were some major event, it could scare people so much that the financial markets would go haywire, because all of a sudden there would be this new element of risk, and the markets don't like risk.
Well, the other interesting thing that I found out about that in my conversation with Elizondo about finances and the financial, ramifications of disclosure was the fact that they at the ATIP program and at the Pentagon were very closely monitoring and watching people's behavior through COVID. Now, we don't talk a lot of COVID during this show because, we're very apolitical, and COVID's become a very political hot button topic and issue for a lot of people. And some justified, some not. But the idea that, they were watching people hoarding toilet paper, hoarding meat, hoarding milk and vegetables and food and everything at grocery stores, that it really put a sheen to, okay, this is something that is curable. This is something that it may not go away, but we're going to get a handle on it. But there's only two major stories in humanity's life, maybe three if you include nuclear holocaust. And that would be, number one, Jesus Christ coming down from the heavens and saying, "I'm back, boys and girls." Or number two, ET contact.
Yeah, well, it really has been a study in human psychology, not only in the current era with COVID, but also just historically. How do people react to these sorts of events? I mean, as you're mentioning all of this, I'm thinking back to the event in Portugal in 1917, at Fatima, Portugal, where thousands of people saw allegedly something, and those events have ripples throughout our society culturally, in terms of not only financial markets is one way, but then also the way people look at life and the world, and how does that impact then what they prioritize? How does that impact business? These are lots of considerations. So it makes sense to me that the government would be tracking behavior.
Yeah, well, you know what? They can track all they want because, people right now are trying to find themselves, just like you are in this field, myself, for my own experiences, and people listening to this show who just have an interest or trying to find an understanding of what happened to them. And, for you, as we got about 90 seconds to go here before we go to break, the path that you were on, are you closer to solution or closer to more questions?
I would say both. I have lots more questions the more I research, especially in this field of contact. There's so much I feel like I don't know, but I feel more conviction in terms of my path, even though I don't know where it's going to lead. I know the general direction and what kinds of values that I hold much more strongly than I did.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Where can people find your book?
It's on Amazon. And it's currently available in paperback and Kindle, and it's for pre-order on Audible, which comes out on August 2nd.
Oh, that's exciting. I've had a book sitting there in my hard drive for about 4 years. 4 years. And every time I think I'm close to finishing it, I'm not. And then I don't know how you guys pump these things out, man. I really have no idea how it's done.
I don't know either. I get a drive and a passion for it, and I get the sense that I have to do it. So I do.
Yeah, so do I. And then my fingers get sore. So I don't know how you guys do that. I'm a pretty good typist. I can type. These fingers, these are workout typing fingers, right? But not for a long
Well, Dave, I wonder if there are just more experiences that you might need to have that need to go into the book, and so you're being delayed.
That's what I think. And that's the excuse I'm having right now. That's my excuse, to be absolutely blunt. Mark Gober is here tonight on Spaced Out Radio, markgober.com. And he's got a great book out in a series of 4, An End to Upside Down Contact, UFOs, Aliens, and Spirits, and why their ongoing interaction with human civilization matters. We found on Amazon or at markgober.com. Check it on out. We're going to get more into the woo side of Mark Gober when we return for the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio next. That was a solid start, man.
Solid. Great
Start.
questions. Thank you, Dave.
Oh, no worries, man. That's what we do here.
Yeah.
That's what we do. Dirty Filth, how you doing down there, buddy?
I'm doing good.
Your baldness is really showing through in this piece of art.
I know. Look at how bright that is on the paper. The sheen is just incredible. I actually did shave my dome today, Dave.
Very nice. Very nice. No scalpel cuts?
No, but I cut my lip actually when I was doing my face. And it's been a long time since I cut my face or my dome.
Well, just be careful.
I was a little bit upset with myself.
You should be. It's embarrassing.
I know. Now the entire world knows about it.
I think you should just grow a mustache and beard. Go full Viking.
Nope. Can't do it.
You totally can. You totally can. I have faith in you.
I could, but I won't.
You might look like one of your cats at the end.
I'd have to sleep on the couch. Mrs. Filth wouldn't let me onto the bed. She'd be like, "Nope, not happening. Get that thing away from me."
Oh, yes. I understand that. I understand that. What's happening, Mark? You having a good time there?
Yeah. I enjoy it. Good conversation.
Excellent. Excellent.
You never know how these conversations are going to impact people.
Very true. Very, very true. And yeah, we'll get into more of the experiencer side and what you've learned when we return from the break.
I'm happy to take it wherever you want, Dave.
Yeah.
I don't have anything specific.
No agenda. That's what I like.
Yeah.
Will you go to Tim Hortons and get us an ice cap if you don't mind? We got time. No, we're out of luck there. Hello to Anonymous Rex, aka Timmy Senor, little Timmy Senor. Hello to the gorgeous and talented Kira. And who else has joined us here? Dutch Hank, thank you for that super chat, along with Tim and Lala. The super chat is a wonderful way to support what we do on Spaced Out Radio on a nightly basis. So thank you for the love, guys. Thank you for the love. We appreciate it. I feel like wanting to break in a song for all of you. By the way, if she is listening tonight, a giant happy birthday to one of our booking team members, Spookles the cat. Did you know it was Spookles' birthday, Dirty Filth?
Of course I did.
Yeah. So I sung her happy birthday today. Called her up, sung her happy birthday, because that's the kind of guy I am. But happy birthday to Spookles the cat. We love you, and you are amazing.
She's elbow deep in catnip right now.
Is she? Because I know earlier she was elbow deep in Chinese food.
I got contacts.
Yeah, Mr. Spookles, buried her in rice. That's what she wanted for dinner tonight, was rice and noodles. So Mr. Spookles buried her in that tonight. Gong Show, how you doing, buddy? Goth White says, Filth, instead of growing a regular beard, grow a neck beard.
But I actually have a neck, so it won't make any sense.
Yeah. What's that like, having a neck? Let's see. Mark's background, he has his book on a pedestal there on his plant. And he's got a beige chair. Uh-huh.
Yeah. This is my interview spot.
Looking at that shirt, though, I mean, you look like a guy who knows how to do his own ironing. Am I right there? Did I call that one?
I learned the tricks from so many business meetings. There's some carryover.
Well, tell me your secrets if you don't mind. I would appreciate that.
Well, steam really helps, especially when you're traveling. Steam helps with the wrinkles.
Yes. I will have to remember that. Big thank you once again to Lala Rex at Dutch Hank for the super chats. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show. Don't forget, you can go shopping at spacedoutradio.com. Check out our store. We got some incredible stuff there for swag for all of you. And yeah, don't forget to check out Phil's page as well. So that way you can go get your own book of his incredible art. We got about 10 seconds here before we're going to fly. So just sit back and stay tuned. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you miss portions of this show or others, check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Author Mark Gober is here, markgober.com. We're talking about UFOs, aliens, consciousness, the phenomena in general, which leads to his book, An End to Upside Down Contact, UFOs, Aliens, and Spirits, and Why Their Ongoing Interaction with Human Civilization Matters. It's a good one you can get on Amazon right now. Mark, welcome back.
Thank you, Dave.
Going through your research through your books, where you try and have a real scientific and research-based idealisms towards what the phenomena is that's going on, how do you draw from experiencers who really only have anecdotal evidence to what has happened to them?
Well, it's a challenge because, let's say, compared to a scientific study on telepathy, which you can do in a laboratory where you have two people trying to mentally send stuff, to each other, which scientists have done, and they show a statistical effect, which is a classic way of trying to prove something in science. We can't really do that with a phenomenon like contact because it doesn't seem to be as controllable, and it's just very strange the way it seems to unfold. And yet we can't ignore anecdotes because people experience these things. So your question actually reminds me of what Kary Mullis said. He's a Nobel Prize winner in chemistry who encountered what he called a glowing raccoon in the woods one night. And the raccoon spoke to him, and then he had hours of missing time. He came back, his flashlight was gone, and he said something to the effect of, these are anecdotal cases. We can't put it into a laboratory, but they happen. So that's the approach I take. And what I like to do is look at a lot of cases and look to see where there's overlap, almost like a Venn diagram. That's when I get interested, when people from independent accounts are describing similar things.
Well, it is something that, is a big argument in the field. And the more you research it, the more you see podcasts and YouTube channels going off on experiencers, the skeptics like Mick West going off on everything that's anecdotal as well as anything that's video because he just doesn't want to believe. I mean, how do you draw an even perspective when the surrounding people in the field are so prejudiced to their own thought and opinion?
Well, one of the most compelling things for me is that contact appears in many different areas. And when I say contact, I mean human interactions with what appear to be non-human intelligences. And typically the word contact is associated with UFOs. And in my book, I do a lot on UFOs. But also there's contact in near-death experiences, which are validated at places like the University of Virginia and by many credible doctors. People in this other realm, they'll encounter what they'll call a being of light or deceased relatives. they are having contact. And there are many other cases of this, like the phenomenon of channeling, where a being will speak through a person's vocal cords. And I'm actually on the board of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, where this is studied scientifically. Helene Wabe, the director of research, wrote a book called The Science of Channeling. So there are these many different areas where it seems to occur. And then when you look on the UFO side, for me, it was really compelling to look at the work of John Mack, Harvard psychiatrist, head of the psychiatry department, Pulitzer Prize winner, who's looking at these abductees very critically, like a trained, meticulous psychiatrist. And he's saying they're not making it up. This is not a disorder. So that also is very compelling to me.
And why do you think, though, other scientists, other researchers, skeptics of the phenomena have such a tough time in understanding that without the anecdotal evidence of people's stories, we really have nothing to study? They're the ones who open the door.
Yeah. Well, what I've noticed, and this started for me back with consciousness studies and psychic phenomena, which, these are in peer-reviewed journals, a lot of these studies, where you'd have a paper that clearly shows there's a statistical effect. And then you have very smart scientists elsewhere who will say things like there's no evidence for psychic phenomena. And what I've found is that there is a resistance to a change in worldview for a lot of people, because if any of this stuff is real, it would require redoing the way you look at life. And I know that's true because I've had to do it, and it's very disruptive and disorienting to go through that process. So it can be easier just to say, no, that's not real. And then on another aspect to it, I think, is personal ego, especially for the more academic types, because if these phenomena are real, it would require looking at science differently. And that might mean that some of their theories would have to be revised. So there's an incentive to say, no, that can't be real. What I've been saying my whole career is right. So we have these psychological factors that are pushing back.
Yeah, we see it a lot with Neil deGrasse Tyson, the astrophysicist who absolutely continues to publicly shame anybody looking into UFOs and the UFO phenomena. Like he says, we don't know if there is life out there, but to suggest that any sort of extraterrestrial life has made its way to planet Earth is just ridiculous and a waste of time, space, and money. Yet you have somebody with the exact same education as Neil deGrasse Tyson and Avi Loeb, astrophysicist from Harvard University. You don't get that position being a dummy. And you don't get that position without doing your research, your papers, and everything, your peer reviews and everything that goes along with it. And yet it just goes to show, same education, one is very open-minded ever since Oumuamua flew through our solar system, which he believed could have been, not is, but could have been a visiting alien craft. Whereas people like deGrasse Tyson just want to use their own ego and say, impossible, not happening, believe me, because this is my title.
Yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson tends to be very skeptical of many phenomena. And I encountered this when I was researching consciousness. And in my podcast series, again, it's called Where is My Mind? We included, my producers and I included a clip of Neil deGrasse Tyson saying something to the effect of, we're trying to understand consciousness. We can't figure it out. I wonder if there's no such thing as consciousness at all. Something to that effect. And if you compare that to what I'm coming up with as a broader thesis, which many others are coming up with as well, which is consciousness is the fundamental basis of all reality, he's on the opposite end of the spectrum. Now, one of the things I wonder, and I don't know Neil deGrasse Tyson, so I'm not accusing him, but there is probably an incentive for a lot of this stuff to be squashed for whatever reason. And there could be people that are out there who are disinformation agents that are paid or are being encouraged to try to debunk this stuff publicly. So I also wonder about that whenever I see the debunkers.
Why do you think there is such an issue with, number one, people saying, especially scientists, and saying that this could be a very, very broad way of looking at a new phenomena? I mean, the idea behind science is it's never ending, or at least it should be never ending. And we have to continue. Like, I look at Dr. Bob McGuire, we call him Science Bob around here, like he states, the minute we stop science and think we know it all, we've lost.
Yeah.
And yet I understand that, with peer review and money and grants and jobs and tenure, this is all very important to scientists who don't want to lose their positions in academia or with major companies that they work for, especially when there's pensions and everything involved. I get that. I can understand where they're biting their tongue. But to be blatant about it, like somebody, and once again, this isn't a shot at Neil deGrasse Tyson, but he has been very public about it. I mean, it almost goes against the grain of everything science is supposed to stand for when it comes to learning what could be new out there.
Yeah. To me, it's hypocritical and it's anti-scientific, ironically. Science has turned into almost a religion, which is what it was designed to counter. So it's ironic that that's become the case. There's almost a dogma of these are the things that we know about science. And if some information comes in that challenges it, then it probably can't be true because we know X, Y, and Z about science. Instead of saying, well, maybe our metaphysics and our worldview needs to be altered, which is what I prefer to do. And I think there are some scientists that do that. They do the opposite and say, no, we already know X, Y, and Z about Newtonian physics and quantum physics. These things can't be true. Now, to your point about the culture in academia, this is something that I've seen when I interviewed consciousness researchers in particular, and also being on the board of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, which is outside of academia. It was founded by Edgar Mitchell, the Apollo 14 astronaut, who had an extraordinary experience that he talked about being in outer space and said, wow, consciousness is really important. We got to study this outside of academia. But one of the prominent scientists I spoke with who studies precognition, which is knowing or sensing things before they happen, which is possible if consciousness exists beyond space and time. There's a lot of scientific evidence for this effect. And she was studying this at a major US university. And she was told, look, you should take this off your resume if you want to get tenure. That's the kind of thing that I'm hearing over and over again. So she left and studies it at independent places, like collaborating with the Institute of Noetic Sciences, where you can do things more freely. But most of the research is happening within these more rigid academic institutions where the dogma seems to persist. And if you're outside of the box, they don't want to look at it.
And once again, it goes against the grain of everything science is supposed to stand for. When you look at it and you look at the peer reviews and research papers that you have read on whether it's near-death experiences, alien abduction, consciousness, telepathy, whatever it may be, did you find any common solutions or any common patterns between the phenomena?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm reminded now of my conversation with one scientist who got a major paper published in 2018 in a mainstream journal, which shows the validity of multiple psychic phenomena. So things like remote viewing, which is seeing or sensing something far away, but using the mind, meaning you're not there physically, but your mind can see it. Telepathy, psychokinesis, which is mind impacting matter, all precognition, knowing or sensing the future before it happens. He aggregated the scientific evidence for all this stuff and showed statistically there's a real effect. And when I spoke with him, he made the comment that we call these things different phenomena, but really they're just aspects of the same thing. So it might be that, going back to this analogy, that we're whirlpools within a stream. If we add on to that, we're perceiving from the whirlpool with the apparatus of a human body, which has limitations, and it's going to perceive things in a certain way because our eyes, for example, only see a certain percentage of the electromagnetic spectrum. There's a lot of stuff our eyes don't see. And we could go on and on with how our senses are limited. And that might mean that we're biased in the way that we perceive things. We might perceive it as telepathy, but it's actually part of something bigger that we can't perceive. We're only catching a little snippet. And one of my favorite analogies with this is something that I've mentioned in 2 of my books, including the book on contact. It comes from the novella called Flatland, where you imagine that we're living on a flat piece of paper. Okay, so we're in 2-dimensional land, 2D land. Imagine if a sphere, a 3-dimensional object, intersected with it. The intersection would be a circle. But if you're living in 2-dimensional land, all you see is that circle because that's your lens of perception. You can't see the rest of the sphere. So you could have scientists and researchers analyzing everything about that circle, and they think they know it all, but actually they're just getting a little sliver of something much bigger. So that might be us.
Oh man, I would love to have that be a part of me, man. I would. I'd open the doors and the eyeballs of so many if I had that kind of conch to hold. But nonetheless, I don't. I want to ask you regarding those patterns, because the one thing that I love about this field is a lot of the answers are where you read between the lines. And have you noticed that as well, where you can have a peer review or you could hear an anecdotal story, but the real story seems to be in between the lines, where the true information on trying to find your path is located?
That's a great point. I think there is, in part of that, self-censorship, especially in the world of academia. They only want to put in the papers what they think is going to get through the peer review process. And sometimes papers are rejected just because of the subject matter. So people have to be careful. And then with regard to the more anecdotal stuff, when people relay their accounts, I could imagine that they might not want to talk about certain things because it might sound too crazy to people who haven't experienced it. And I notice, especially when I listen to lots of interviews of people talking, you get a sense sometimes that there's something they're leaving out, but they give a little hint that they had maybe something much broader than what they're leading as the headline. And I have noticed just in the research process to really pay attention to those things.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I find a lot of my information. I remember, talking to some old school journalists when I was in radio. They always said, read between the lines. That's where the story is located. And it's done me well in this field in learning, trying to figure out, what is true and what is not when it comes to interviewing people about their experiences and interviewing scientists and others about their research regarding the phenomena at hand. Do you ever see a day when the two can play nice together in the same sandbox, the scientific research and the people who are having the experiences?
I wonder. I really do. Some days I'm optimistic. Some days I'm more pessimistic. And it would probably require, in order for that to happen, some kind of a cultural shift where the same taboo that we have today doesn't exist for whatever reason. And I don't see us getting there overnight necessarily. But it's super important that the experiencers come out and tell their story. And it's important that some scientists who are willing to stick their necks out are willing to evaluate it, like John Mack and Avi Loeb, to speak about these things publicly. So I think we need more and more of that. And also more shows like yours, which expose this information to people who might not know about it. You're playing a vital role, I think.
Well, I look at somebody like Dr. Gary Nolan at Stanford University. The scientists and doctors at Rice University who are doing major experiments on people who claim to have ET contact. They're looking into everything from brain reaction to the psychological aspects, along with any potential implants that people claim to have as well. And I think we're getting closer. But it's almost like the Salem witch hunt, where you still got to be like, people know it's happening in the scientific community, but it's them over there. We don't talk about that. That's still taboo regarding it. But there is, we can't be remiss to say that there isn't positive research going on regarding this.
Yes. It's happening, but it's not happening in the same levels that we see for other areas of research. And one of the practical issues here is funding. You could want to study an implant, you could have just a huge desire to try to look at the metallic composition, for example, of an implant that's been extracted, but that costs money and you need to have people to do it. It's a whole process, and the infrastructure doesn't seem to be as strong for this area because of the taboo and everything else. So I think as there's a cultural shift where these things become more normal, maybe there will be a shift in funding as well, which will then spiral hopefully to a greater understanding.
Incredible. We got about 5.5 minutes before we have to go to break at the top of the hour. Mark Gober is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. He has a brand new book out called An End to Upside Down Contact, UFOs, Aliens, and Spirits, and Why Their Ongoing Interaction with Human Civilization Matters. Let's shift gears here, because I know in hour number 2, we're going to get a bunch of questions from our audience. I can already sense it. It's my intuition. But alien contact. This is something you go over in your book regarding the phenomena and whether or not it's happened. How is it happening? You believe that we're not alone in this universe. Do you believe, after everything you've studied, that extraterrestrials or some sort of alien life form has made its way to this planet and has been here for millennia? Are you of that understanding?
Yes. Where they come from and who they are, like defining they is also challenging because we might be dealing with many species, and that's what I tend to think. So they might be different species who inhabit different parts of the universe. Maybe some are multidimensional, others aren't. There's speculation about time travelers from the future. And when you start incorporating things like time, there are lots of questions. But I do look at the historical aspect in the book. And cultures throughout the world have talked about the star people and the sky gods coming down and teaching them things, or even in some cases, abductions are reported all over the world. You can look at texts in the Bible and relate those to potential encounters with non-human intelligences. I mean, one that many people talk about is Ezekiel's vision, when there were fiery chariots and creatures that he described. That could easily be construed as some kind of a contact encounter. And when you put all that together, to me, it suggests that not only are we not alone, but this has been going on for a very long time. It's not a new phenomenon, although maybe the quality of it has changed in that there might be different beings that are intervening at different times with different cultures. Or to give another possibility, because I don't know for sure, we have to consider shape-shifting as well, as that beings could appear to be multiple things to different people because they're able to do that. And even John Mack from Harvard, he said something to the effect of, paraphrasing, that the alien beings seem to be consummate shapeshifters, because he heard this so many times. And we hear this with screen memories, where a person might say, I encountered an owl. And then under hypnosis, they're asked to evaluate this owl that they claimed they saw when they had missing time. And they'll say, wait a second, this isn't an owl. This is a gray alien being, that somehow the memory had been implanted where they saw something different. So all these raise questions about who they are. But to me, it suggests still that something's been going on and it's not new.
It may not be new to you, but I mean, there's a lot of people who claim there's family involved, genetics involved, heritage involved, whether not just blood type like Rh negative, which I'm still not convinced as an Rh positive person that Rh negative has anything to do with it. But for you, as you look into it scientifically and people who are going through this, have you talked to anybody who has figured out why they've been taken? Because that always seems to be a very tough question, the why me aspect.
Yeah, it's a big question. And in the book, I actually go through various explanations because I don't know. And it might be a different answer in different cases. But one that I'll mention now that comes to mind is the one that's probably the hardest to accept. But I'm warming up to it just because it's come up in my research prior to alien encounters, which is the notion that some of these things might be planned by the soul before incarnating in the body. And there could be soul contracts where the person doesn't realize that on some level they voluntarily agreed to the experience, but they don't remember it. So that's one possibility. And then who knows, there could be certain genetics that are preferred in some people that these beings want when they're doing their hybridization program. There could be a whole range of explanations.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that one. I realize I shouldn't opine, okay, and I love using the word opine when I get the opportunity because it makes me feel smarter, okay. But I gotta say that the whole soul contract thing that you have to go, that you signed up for this, I have a real tough time with that one because I don't think I would sign. You're not just signing up for ET contact. You're signing up for a lot of things that are quite hell on earth. I wouldn't want to be a child with cancer or a child in Africa who is starving to death because wars and governments have stolen all the food. I wouldn't want to be in a communist situation like in China or wherever. I wouldn't want to be beaten as a child or abused in any way, or as an adult for that factor. So I have a real tough time with 30 seconds to go buying into that, man. I do.
Well, very quickly, I'll give two responses. One, at the University of Virginia, they study children with past life memories, and often those children also remember intermission memories, so between lives, which suggests that this period might exist. And with regard to your point that why would someone want to plan this, there's a book called Your Soul's Plan that goes through this notion that for reasons of the soul's evolution, that they might plan challenges, which to us seem horrible, but on a soul level have some kind of a different benefit that we can't fully understand. So that's at least the theory.
Well, you know what? There's a lot of theories out there, and I love the fact that you're tackling them. Mark Gober, author of a great book called An End to Upside Down Contact, UFOs, Aliens, and Spirits, and Why Their Ongoing Interaction with Human Civilization Matters. We'll continue with the talk with Mark on experiences when we return on Spaced Out Radio for hour number 2, right around the corner. That's a damn good hour of radio, man. A damn good hour of radio. I'm just saying, I might be a little braggadocious here, but that was a damn good hour of radio.
I think we covered a lot, and Dave, you are a very good interviewer. So thank you for covering so many topics.
I appreciate that. We're going to hit some more here. Super Quest, how you doing, buddy? Radiohead, hi, how are you? And who else just jumped in here? Starscard, how are you? I'm going to step away for a minute. Mark, if you want, I can put you back in the green room, or you can watch Filth here up front. It's up to you, and I'll be right back.
Okay. I can hang out here. Thanks.
All right.
Okay, so this, just so everybody knows, also, Mark, I usually just tell everybody at the top of the hour what I'm going to end up sort of doing here. Basically, it's a Fresno, California nightcrawler, and I drew a cartoon a couple years ago where he was standing and looking at a pair of pants on clothesline, and this one is he's going to contemplate stealing the pair of pants to wear them. If you've never seen them, what the Fresno nightcrawlers look like, they basically look like a pair of pants walking, but kind of ghostly. So I'm going with that, and he ends up being tempted by a pair of pants, steals them, and then a man in black stops him and asks him to return the trousers. That's what the whole cartoon is going to be. 2 pages. Sometimes I just do one, but I didn't know what I was going to draw today. I never really do. I just kind of come in guns blazing. And it looks like a bunch of blobs of nothing, but trust me, at the end, it'll make sense. You'll be able to see what
It's like a Polaroid that's unfolding in front of us.
Hey, that's a good way to explain it. I used to draw realistic portraits and things like that when I was younger, and then there wasn't enough cartoons out there, and I figured I'll just draw my own cartoons, and I ended up kind of getting into watercolor. One of my favorite artists, Milo Menard, does a lot of watercolor stuff, and I just thought it was a really beautiful way to work with. And it's just, I like working with watercolor because it's so fluid and I can just move the colors wherever I need to, if that makes any sense. Oh boy. And I don't have like a super fancy professional setup or anything. I've just been working with the stuff that I got, but I'm investigating so that I can do some drawings, and the aggressive focusing doesn't work. And I'm not a super techie guy either, but it's fun nonetheless, and apparently people enjoy it, so might as well. And it just pads the meters for my next book.
Well, it's very unique for a show. I love it.
Thanks. I appreciate the kind words. But one day, Dave, I messaged him years ago, 2019 or something. And I had a drawing of the S4 sports model, and I sent it to him and I said, "Hey, Dave, do you want this drawing?" And he's like, "Really? You'll give that to me?" And I go, "Did Bob Bigelow own Skinwalker Ranch?" He's like, "Yeah, he did." So I mailed it to him, and then I just kept sending him a couple of drawings and everything once in a while, just over Facebook. And he goes, "Hey, you want to draw cartoons for me maybe like once a week?" And I said, "Sure." So I started drawing cartoons for Dave, and then he's like, maybe we'll just get you to draw live on the show. And I kind of panicked a little bit. I'm like, I don't know, I don't really have anything to say. He's like, you don't have to say anything, you can just draw cartoons. Then I was sold.
Yeah, it's mesmerizing.
It's kind of like magic. And I got 2 separate drawings that I'm working on at the same time, and I try to go from the top to the bottom. And I've never actually recorded it.
Excuse me.
And then put it into like a fast speed drawing thing, or time lapse rather.
Dirty Filth, Ronnie in the Spreaker chat room says that you should be growing a Salvador Dali type mustache. I would agree with that. Hello, Stunning. Yes, that would be nice.
What about a warlock beard? One of those like pointy ones.
I would be happy with that. Stunning Pam Smith, how you doing? Nicholas Shaughnessy, how's the hair tonight? Give us an update. We got 1 minute here, Mark. We like good facial hair and hair around here, Mark.
Okay, excellent.
Mm-hmm. Trying to figure out what you're drawing there, Filth. It's obviously a nighttime scene. I can't figure that out just yet. All right. Big thank you tonight to Bart, Worsley, YJ, Dutch Hank, Rex, and Lala for the super chats. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. If you haven't already, do us a favor, give us a thumbs up or down. It really helps with our algorithms, and we'd appreciate it. Don't forget, after the show, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. And here we go, everyone, with hour number 2 coming up in 2 seconds.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for your beautiful time that you are sharing with us this evening. We really do appreciate it. Want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Womble. Womble is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Author and researcher Mark Gober is here. MarkGober.com is his website. He's got a great new book out called An End to Upside Down Contact, UFOs, Aliens, and Spirits, and Why Their Ongoing Interaction with Human Civilization Matters. Mark, we welcome you back. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you again, Dave.
Let's get right to it. You know, we talked a little bit about experiencers right beforehand, but I mean, the bigger question is about whether or not we are alone really comes from us staring into the stars for centuries, since humanity really started to use our brains and think about what the possibilities of human life is going to be in the future. And we keep evolving each and every day, you know, and more people these days, due to the publicity of UFOs, are really staring up into the stars, wondering if they're going to be able to see something anomalous that maybe they've never seen before. And more we are getting reports each and every day from not only around North America, but the world regarding UFO sightings. More people are filming them because of having cameras on smartphones. Sure, they just may look like dots. And, you know, there's a lot of people who are still very critical about anything that is filmed in the sky, wondering whether or not it's ours or theirs. What is the importance of us really delving into this subject of whether or not we are being visited?
Well, I think it's important from a, call it a cultural, psychological standpoint, because asking these big questions, and I can say this from my own experience, changes one's outlook on life. And it might change the things that people care about and they value when you think about our existence within the context of something much broader in this dimension and possibly many other dimensions. Whereas we can get very caught up in just the day-to-day of our struggles and ups and downs, which is not something to dismiss. But when we start looking up in the sky and asking these bigger questions, I think it has an overall impact, which to me is ultimately a positive one.
Okay, how is it positive? Why would any sort of extraterrestrial contact be positive?
Well, to me, anything that moves toward getting to the truth of our existence is ultimately positive. That's just the way I look at things, because once we get closer to the truth, then we can live life accordingly, and we can prioritize that way. If we are not alone, which I think there's strong evidence suggesting we're not, that's a very important thing to know. It's sort of like if you live in a city, or let's say a town, you want to know who your neighbors are, which areas are the dangerous ones, which are the safe ones. You just want to know about your surroundings. And I think we need to understand that about our existence, because there seems to be a spectrum of benevolent and sometimes not so benevolent beings. We need to understand that and the way in which they're intervening in our world in order to have any clue of what's going on.
What has convinced you that this is truly going on?
I came into this in terms of the more UFO related contact, having spent several years looking at consciousness related contact, like in a near death experience state when they're clinically dead and they encounter a being, for example. There are many other cases like this. I was primed to accept that there were other intelligences that many people have reported. And also, with regard to research on past lives, this was something I came across very early in my research. Children with past life memories, that's probably the scientifically strongest stuff. 2,500 cases studied at the University of Virginia. But the less, if you want to call it, less scientifically rigorous area, which still seems to me has some credibility, is the use of hypnosis. And some people will say, look, hypnosis is generally not credible. But even those who are skeptical, I found, like Dr. Ian Stevenson at the University of Virginia, he said there were some cases where people brought forth information that he couldn't explain. So sometimes they bring forth important information. And along those lines, there are researchers who find that people, when they're regressed to a previous life, will describe that they were not on this planet and they were not a human species. And the example that I give in my book is Dr. Linda Bachman, who was, first of all, she was a conventional psychologist and she had a mystical experience. Then she was doing past life regression hypnotherapy, not interested in aliens. And all of a sudden, people started describing spontaneously these experiences on other planets as some being that's not a human. She calls them interplanetary souls. And it happened so often that she ended up writing a new book called about this topic, about interplanetary souls, because people independently were describing this. So I was hearing all this stuff before even looking at the UFOs as closely. And so I wasn't as surprised when I came across this other stuff.
Okay, so the idea that we are not alone in the universe and that we do have potential of more advanced civilizations studying us and being here, this opens up the entire gamut and Pandora's box of what does the government know? What are they holding from us? What kind of experiences do they have locked up in vaults at places like the Pentagon? It opens up an entire genre to what we expect is disclosure, but we're never going to really get that, are we?
I'm very skeptical that it will come from a government organization that might not have an incentive for the citizens to know the full truth. I view this as a grassroots movement where people are going to have to, on their own, somehow come to this realization, or maybe at some point there will be some kind of a major revelation. Although some might argue that we've had things like the Phoenix Lights, and I mentioned the event in Fatima, Portugal, where there have been mass sightings to some degree. But if we look at the history of governments, they share with the citizens what is in their best interest to share. And what I found in my research, and look, I'm not in the government, so I don't know exactly what's going on, is this notion that there are programs that are secretive even for those within government. So there might be government officials who have lots of knowledge about certain things, but might have no clue about secret programs that have been existing. And you have political officials who have a certain tenure or they come in and out of office. There are other government officials that don't have those sorts of limitations that might outlast any one political figure.
Do you think, though, that the military-industrial complex has a lot to say about whether or not the subjects get released and the knowledge of it gets released?
I tend to think so. I think the media is very much controlled in terms of what stories make it out there. And there's lots of evidence suggesting that governments influence media. And that's how most people learn about the world. I mean, think about it. How do we, as any individual, how do we know anything about the world? We have direct experience, and then we have other things that people told us. And those other things are education, so in school, but the media plays a big role in that. We're relying on the accounts of other people. And if that mechanism is controlled by other forces, then our perception of reality will be skewed in the direction that they prefer.
You know what? I agree with you on that. The media really does control the message on what we're doing. I actually just gave a talk in Denver at the MUFON Symposium in regards to how the media works regarding this subject of UFOs and the reason why they really haven't covered it the way they probably should. And the one thing I can say from working in a newsroom is much like the same thing you said about the scientific community. The majority of it is ego. And, you know, they look at people like you, like me, like our audience members out there, that like we're a bunch of tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists who aren't educated, who don't have post-secondary education, who struggle with minimum wage, still live in mom's basement. You know what I'm saying? And that's the way this subject gets treated, even though there's a plethora of brilliancy within the communities of who is studying this phenomena. And I do believe, like, even when it comes to UFOs, the media has yet to ask any pointed and direct questions that could help solve some of this, to put pressure on military members, government members, about bringing those answers out. And it's been a failure for society in general.
Well, I agree with you. And you're reminding me of research I actually did for my third book, An End to Upside Down Liberty. I had a whole chapter on mind control in the media. And you're reminding me of a New York Times journalist, Barry Weiss, who wrote a resignation letter that's publicly available that talks about what was happening at the New York Times, that just like what we're talking about in academia, where certain ideas are shunned, she was describing something similar, where you basically had to be on a certain path. And if you veered off from that, then it was not going to be allowed. And think about how impactful that is for the public that is trusting these sources to tell us what's actually happening in the world. If certain stories don't make the cut just because it's not in their box, then what's being hidden from us? And I think we do see that even with the disclosure that has happened, because there has been some, including from the New York Times, it does, I agree with you, seem to be very limited in its scope. And we see the same thing in the congressional hearings. It seems to fit within a certain box, and they don't want to make too many huge claims about some of the other phenomena that your listeners are probably very familiar with, that there's this a very careful messaging that is happening everywhere.
Well, the interesting part about that is, you know, to add to your New York Times knowledge, next to 9/11 and the papers that the New York Times wrote about 9/11, the December 16th article regarding UFOs written by Leslie Kean, Helene Cooper, and Pulitzer Prize winner Ralph Blumenthal about UFOs was the second highest financially successful paper the New York Times has ever produced. And the interesting part about that is, normally when you have a story of that magnitude and that popular, there's a follow-up the next day or within the next couple of days regarding the information that didn't make it to article number 1. We never got that. In fact, it took months before the New York Times wrote another article on it. And I have a feeling that's pure ego, because the editors there didn't think that this story would fly. They released it on a weekend, and it went nuts. It went haywire. It showed really how much interest the public has in this story, and they were not prepared to move it past that original story. To me, it was a bad business move. Never mind a journalistic move in the follow-up story, which we all wanted, but a bad business move for the point of sales.
Yes. And it makes me wonder, because just from my financial background, I'm always trying to follow the money trail. And when something like that happens, that seems very contradictory to what you'd expect. You'd expect them to want to go with stories that are just going to make money. It makes me wonder if there are other forces involved, where it's in these cases, it's not just about the finances, that there might be other reasons for trying to suppress this information.
Well, exactly. I mean, you look at sports. A lot of people, have lost their love of sports. We've really seen that from 2010 on up. And, there's a lot of ways to argue that. I'm a former sports journalist, so I can really understand the point of view here with a lot of stuff that I'm about to say. And that is, if let's say your favorite baseball team or hockey team or football team fires their coach, there's 3 days of stories, 4 days of stories regarding the firing, why the firing happened, what led to the dismissal of the coach, who's the new coach, what is this new coach going to bring, how is the team going to react to it. There is days worth of follow-up on one firing, yet UFOs, we get nothing. We don't even get a proper question. We get question about swamp gas and little green men. And to me, that's a detriment to all of us who are trying to learn more, and especially educating the public, which is the job of the media.
Yeah, in theory, it should be the job of the media. And I just wonder, based on the research that I've done looking at this, how much is being controlled by intelligence agencies, for example. There's been lots of evidence that's come out over the last several decades on the relationship between intelligence agencies and the media, and how much things are being steered for what they would call the interest of national security. They might use that as the rationale of, well, we can't go further with this story because it would lead to something that we don't want, maybe mass chaos, or maybe people would be too focused on this topic. I don't know what their psychology is, but we can't forget that these strings might be pulled, especially for the major media outlets.
So how do we get the message out? What is the key to getting the message out?
Well, I would say two things to that. Number one, I'll look at it from, like, I'll call it a physical, traditional lens, and also a metaphysical. And from the traditional physical lens, I think what you're doing with your show, Dave, is incredibly important to make this information available. What I'm trying to do with my books and my podcast series, I'm trying to get information out there that was very impactful in my life, and I want to share it with people. And many other people are doing this. So it's that kind of a desire to share at a grassroots level, I think, is going to be critical. And also people being willing to speak out if they've had an experience themselves, to have the bravery, which I can't imagine. So many people are able to do this, which is amazing. But on the metaphysical level, if we think back to the model that I described, the idea that everything is consciousness, that would suggest that when consciousness shifts, and if our physical reality is a product of that consciousness, then our consciousness shifts could shift the physical world in certain ways. So this sort of information spreading might have a metaphysical impact in ways that we can't trace using our linear mind, but it might affect the overall field, and it might manifest in some major disclosure. And we don't realize it was because Dave had a great guest a month ago where they discussed information that shifted the consciousness of all the listeners, for example.
Okay, so the fact that you believe that we are being contacted, that we are having contact from other earthly realms, whether it's the other side from the dead or the paranormal, let's say, to out there in space. What about areas like time travel? Do you ever look at time travel as maybe one of the ways that we are being affected by today's world?
It's something I only touch on briefly in the book because I don't feel like I have a grasp of it. I've heard many people speculate about this. They also talk about that some of these beings might be time travelers from the future. Now, I'm open to the possibility because of the research that I've done regarding consciousness, and this idea that consciousness is not only the basis of reality, but it exists beyond space and time. And when you look at some of the research on precognition, which I mentioned before, let me give an
Right.
example of one of the studies because it makes possible some of this other stuff. The classic study they have people do is you're looking, and I've actually done this study at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. You're sitting in front of a computer screen and they flash images. Some are peaceful images like a mountain, something that's not going to stimulate your physiology. And other pictures are designed to stimulate your physiology. They might be erotic. They might be very violent. These are things where in psychology, they know that after the image is shown and they measure your body, there's a strong correlation. If it's a violent image, your body, like your it's called a galvanic skin response, the pupil dilation, measurements in the brain, for example, these things are affected after the image is shown. So what these experimenters did is they reversed it and said, let's measure the body before the image comes up on the screen. Why would anyone think to do that, right? Because if time is linear, how should a future image impact the body? That's impossible, right? And what they find is that those same metrics, there's a small but highly statistically significant effect where the body is responding before the image shows up. No one knows what the image is going to be because it's randomly generated by a computer. And yet something seems to be happening. Some call it retrocausality. These types of phenomena open my mind to the potential of time traveling.
Okay. Do you believe then you can time travel spiritually and physically?
Well, spiritually, this is something that does come up a lot. And I'm thinking of remote viewing studies that have been done, for example, with the US government. Project Stargate, people talk about a lot. I actually interviewed Russell Targ, who was one of the leaders of the program in the 1970s, where with remote viewing, you can do precognitive remote viewing, or you could remote view the future. Actually, at Princeton University, they ran over 650 trials at the Pear Lab run by the former dean of engineering, where they were looking at remote viewing as well. And they were doing it independent of time. So the consciousness seems to be able to travel not only in space, but also in time, past, present, and future.
Mark Gober is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. And we are talking about UFOs, ETs, time travel, absolutely everything under the sun. We got about 2.5 minutes to go before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour, Mark. Okay, so the fact that this is happening to ordinary people, who are, many of them are struggling just to be alive right now. It's a tough time right now, with finances, with COVID, with everything that's going on with the economy, inflation. It's just an ugly time for a lot of people. And then when you throw in these extraordinary experiences that more people are waking up to, how does humanity find the balance? Is this just an internal strength that we have through our own consciousness?
Well, when I think to my own experience, it required strength to keep going with it. I had to will myself forward because this stuff was so disorienting to my worldview. I had to say, well, I don't care how earth-shattering this is. I want to learn more. And on a spiritual level or a consciousness level, maybe there's something to that where there's a force that's trying to push us toward the truth, whatever truth has been obscured, whether through more conspiratorial lenses or also just part of being a human. Maybe part of this human experience is to have the block, and part of our spiritual goal is to release that block and remember ourselves in some way. So there might be a spiritual impetus within all of us to try to want to uncover the truth, regardless of what our personal circumstances are.
You think that maybe it's because we are in some sort of holographic universe that our mind creates on its own?
Well, I tend to think that this is holographic to some degree. Now, the question is the creator. Now, if we are all interconnected as part of one consciousness, then at some level, an aspect of us is the creator. We're the creator and the player in the game, if you adopt that lens. But even within that game, you could have multiple dimensions. So you could have beings that impact the experience of other beings. And this gets into the notion of other aliens who have maybe impacted us from our inception, perhaps, where we have been designed or engineered to have certain experiences, certain blocks. I don't know, but it could be a multidimensional type of a game.
Well, we'll soon find out as we have Mark Gober here for another 30 minutes on Spaced Out Radio. And of course, he'll be back right after the break that we're about to hop out to at the bottom of the hour. And of course, if there's audience questions from our chat rooms, we will take them as well. MarkGober.com is his website. And you know what? Go look at his books. They tie into everything that we talk about. He's written 4 books: An End to Upside Down Contact, UFOs, Aliens, and Spirits, and Why Their Ongoing Interaction with Human Civilization Matters. There's 3 more that all tie into the same. Are the answers out there? Are we looking for aliens? Is there a UFO above your house? How about Bigfoot in the forest? Mark Gober next. All right, we are clear. We are clear. Still having fun, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. Covering a lot of ground.
It's exciting. It's exciting. Yep.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. I mean, I love thinking about it and talking about it, especially with someone like you who's so knowledgeable and who's had personal experience. I mean, it's great to hear your opinions.
You know, I listen to there's a lot of smart people in these fields. And, you know, I've had the pleasure of speaking with a lot of them. And I'm not talking just people who are educated and have master's and doctor's degrees. I mean, I've met a lot of people who have had experiences just like mine or worse than mine or more than mine or whatever, and just listening to them speak. And I think in the end, that's all we really want, is we just want to be able to express our encounters about what happened with us. And I think the scientific community especially misses out on a lot of information because they don't want to go down the experiential route. You know, I don't care if it's anecdotal evidence or not. I really don't. But I believe that there's a lot of people out there who, if they're tapped in, could really provide some incredible information regarding this.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I could show you this right here. This was a download that came to me. I don't know what the hell that means. I don't know what it's about. To me, it looks cool. It'll make a great tattoo. Okay. But I would love a scientist to tell me whether or not they've seen that.
Huh.
What does it mean? Right?
Yeah. Fascinating.
Little things like that. What does it mean? I mean, but there are people, you know, who get the downloads of binary code and other sorts of shapes and geographical and hieroglyphical images, right?
Yeah.
We don't know.
We need to have more collaboration like we do in other areas.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So fascinating. I mean, like you were alluding to, the more I learn about this, the more I realize there's just infinite rabbit holes. It's incredible.
Yeah. That's, you know, that's why I love somebody like Grant Cameron. He's a hero and an idol of mine in this field. And, you know, I've always said, when you open that first door and you step in, right behind that first door, there's 10 more doors. And behind each of those 10 doors, there's 10 doors. So you go 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, and you're moving on. And you have to be able to, in my opinion, follow the paths, no matter how short or how long they're going. And a lot of people will crap on Grant Cameron, saying, oh, he's gone nuts, he's gone crazy, you know, because he went from presidential UFOs, White House UFOs to you know, traveling down the Wu train with consciousness and downloads and people flying the craft and everything like that. But there's a lot of information to it. He's just the man who's taken the path to find it, you know? So
yeah, I respect him for that, for being willing to make that pivot and then incorporate it.
It's been an incredible journey. It really has. and I respect him and Nicole Sakic, his assistant, who's worked with him the last few years more than anything, right? And I look at it as, this is game changer research, because most research out there started off as a laughter from other people.
Yeah. But it's amazing how serious the research is when you take the time to dig into it. Like you say, some very smart people are looking at this seriously, and they've found results, and it's not just a few people.
Yeah.
And that's why I felt like I could write a book about it. There's a lot of evidence.
Especially when you get so many people from around the world who have never met each other having the same experiences. How can that happen? Right. With
such specific and bizarre details.
Absolutely.
How could you make that up? I mean, that's compelling to me too. And I think for John Mack, similar.
Yeah. We have about 15 seconds. Thank you to Lala, Rex, Dutch Hank, YJ, Worsley, Bart, and Allison for the amazing super chats. If you haven't already, please give us a thumbs up or thumbs down. It really helps with the algorithms. Here we go with the next half hour. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott, reminding you that all of our archives are free. All you got to do is join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio and do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. For the final time tonight, our guest, author Mark Gober, is here. His website, markgober.com, where you can find his 4 books, along with on Amazon. And we're talking UFOs, aliens, spirits, and why their ongoing interaction with human civilization matters, an end to upside-down contact. So, Mark, in the end, why does it matter? What should we care? What should everyday citizen care when they have their mortgage to worry about, they have their bank accounts to worry about, retirement, everything is going up. It's $200 to fill up a truck. Gas prices at an all-time high, at least for this generation. Food prices are going up. Everything's being modified. Everyone hates Bill Gates. The Kardashians are more popular than reality. What are we doing wrong? Why does this all matter?
Well, to me, from my lens, the meaning of our existence, at least partially, is about the evolution of consciousness. Meaning we're trying to reach a higher state. And what people describe in the near-death experience often is moving toward a state of unconditional love. They often can't describe it with words, but we're trying to get to, like when I talked about the life review of trying to treat each other well, we're moving toward a more evolved state of being. And therefore, the more minor things that are happening in our lives, they're not totally insignificant, but in the broader scheme of things, we need to think about spiritual evolution. And our place in the universe might be related to that. Now, from a more like a darker perspective, there are theories that our souls are somehow repressed because of the world that we live in. We are not able to have as many spiritually transformative experiences, and the soul can be almost trapped. And, there are theories along those lines. Whether or not those are true, I think our spiritual evolution has to be a priority. And a big part of that is understanding who we are and what exists around us.
Okay, but, we are becoming a more agnostic society, especially here in North America. It's already big time in Canada, but in the United States, there's still a large religious contingent that flows right through government parties and politics and everything. So how do we find our own spirituality if we're still being dictated to by mainstream religion?
It takes an individual who really wants the truth, and a bunch of individuals doing that. Back to our prior conversation, I think the fact that there's so much information available makes it possible to break out of the more conventional ways of thinking or whatever box we're told to be in. So in that sense, technology is very helpful to this process because and it's happened to me. I mean, my awakening, if you want to call it that, was started by podcasts and then access to books. The information is out there where I think it is now possible for people to do it, but it takes the conviction of the individual to want to go down that path.
All right, let's get to a question from YJ here in British Columbia. Mark, any advice for the experiencer community about being able to help usher a positive change in the face of a difficult disclosure process?
Yeah, it's a great question. When I think about ushering in positive change generally, which I get asked about a lot, and I've had to think about a lot, we don't know the impact of our individual actions. And we see this in the life review and near-death experiences, where people will see the way they treated a cashier in line. I'm thinking of one example. The person mistreated the cashier in line. And then during the life review, they relived how it made the cashier feel, and then how the cashier did not treat every other person in line afterwards as well, because she was not in as good a mood, for example. So these tiny little things that we do in our life might end up having a big impact. It's known as the butterfly effect mathematically, where a butterfly flapping its wings in China can cause a hurricane on the east coast of the US. Mathematically, those tiny changes in the initial conditions actually can have a nonlinear massive effect. So I just preface with that, where we have to focus on the little things in our own individual life. And that might just mean trying to be a good person to others. It might be educating a family member or a friend on some of these topics and saying, hey, I came across this really important piece of information. That can be transformative for people, that one conversation. And I've noticed that. And that actually started my path when I first came across research. I was afraid to talk about it with people because I thought they'd think I was crazy. And then I started to get more comfortable with the science. And over dinner and lunches, I would talk to friends and say, look, I'm interested in this research. I came across this study. And then some people would say to me, like a week later, Mark, I'm still thinking about this conversation we had and that evidence you talked about. So I think sharing is a really important part of this process.
It totally is an important part as moving humanity and disclosure together with the same love and appreciation everyone has for the subject. But I also believe too that there is a big game being played, because in order to keep it public, in order to keep the money flow going, you need to have a threat. And that's what we're seeing right now with UFOs being considered a threat. So my question is to you, where do you stand on that? Where the government side is pushing one agenda, which seems to be different than those who are experiencing phenomena.
Yeah, well, there are theories about potential false flags where an event is created so that there can be a reaction to that event that creates whatever the government wants. So creating fear is one way that's been done historically, is you create a situation where the public says, please alleviate our fear. And that allows the government to take away rights or to do whatever it wants. That's always a possibility. I have no insider information on that. But that's whatever the government's goal is, I would guess, is probably not in alignment with what the public's preference would be, which is likely just the truth. And we're getting a skewed version typically. So again, that's why I think it has to be grassroots, where enough of us get the information out there outside of the government apparatus, where there's almost a critical mass. I don't know what that number is, but maybe it's not 100% of people. Maybe it's a much smaller number where we can radiate, both in terms of our information and our consciousness, something where we see a shift.
Where does that shift come from? Does it come from the public? Does it come from the scientific community? We know it's not going to come from the government.
Yeah, it's probably some combination of independent media, maybe traditional media, maybe some brave academics, and then maybe some institutions that are well-funded. That's really critical, is the funding, that are able to study these phenomena. I think it's a combo.
My goodness, that's going to take a lot of open minds, man. And we're not just talking the scientific coalition of UAP studies. We're talking hundreds, if not thousands of people who are going to have to come together. And I don't even know if that's even possible.
So what I think about with that is, like, I don't understand the game that we're in. And there are beings, based on my research, I would say some are very benevolent and some are evil. But many of these beings are very advanced. So particularly the benevolent ones, they might be able to help us in ways that we don't fully understand, where something to us might seem impossible from a human lens. Maybe it's not so impossible for those beings to help.
Do you think the U.S. government or any government in the world at this point has had contact?
I would guess. It's difficult to prove that, but there's a lot of testimony which suggests that the government has had contact for sure. Yeah.
Why do you think this all has to be a U.S.-led disclosure?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the U.S. has such global influence and tends to be regarded as one of the freer nations. So maybe there's greater possibility here, but maybe that's coming from a U.S.-centric or North America-centric perspective. I don't know the perspective of others in other places in the world. Maybe there are other governments that have a big role in this that we're not aware of. I just wonder.
I think that's a great point, though, because I mean, you look at Russia and the United States. Publicly they claim to be bitter enemies about the way everything should be done, and the West is wrong, NATO is wrong according to Russia, and we're yelling at them. You're not communist anymore, and grow up, kind of thing, and yet when it comes to space, we see NASA and the Russian Space Agency working together like they're brothers and sisters, and and everything behind the scenes seems to be working. It really is one big game, isn't it?
Well, that's what it feels like, and we don't know because we don't see it unless you're on the inside what the individual incentives are behind any interaction. So there could be things happening that are not in the interest of the citizens, for sure, that we always have to keep that in mind. And then when you throw the multidimensional aspect to it, we don't know how people, if we consider the brain to be like an antenna, we don't know how people are being influenced by other beings, perhaps in other dimensions, that are steering people in a certain direction based on what those beings want.
Oh, and that's the hard part. From your studies, from talking to people who have had interaction with beings, what do the aliens want? What do you think we provide for them? I'm not trying to go down a road of Independence Day here or even Close Encounters with the Third Kind, but we see people being used as science experiments. We see people being used for potential hybridization programs, and we see people who are being given the keys to the ship and say, "Fly away. You've got the driver's seat here." I mean, we're seeing a real difference in experiences people are having.
Well, I'll give two sides to this because there are many different theories, the benevolent and then the darker take. So the more benevolent take to this is that it's an evolutionary insurance program, especially regarding the hybridization program, that if something really bad happens on the planet that would wipe out a lot of humans, at least this hybrid species would exist that would have some of the genetics. So some people speculate that that's happening. And then also there's a lot of research, and it started with Kenneth Ring from the University of Connecticut. He wrote the Omega Project in 1992. He studies near-death experiences, but compared the psychological impact of those who had near-death experiences to those who had UFO encounters. And he found many similarities. One of the main similarities was that people had a significant spiritual shift. Even if the experience was not pleasant on the surface, they shifted spiritually. So some would say that these experiences open people up, and therefore there's something positive that comes from it, even if it feels super negative. So that's one take. The darker take comes from researchers like Dr. David Jacobs from Temple University, who talks to many abductees. And what he claims has happened is that there's a shift in what the abductees are telling him over time, where in his most recent book, Walking Among Us, he thinks that this is a planetary takeover attempt, that hybrids are being created to be indistinguishable from humans, meaning you wouldn't even be able to tell they're a hybrid, but they have the enhanced mental capacities of these other beings, and they would blend in with society to try to take us over. Now, I don't know which is true, and maybe there's truth to some of this in each case, and maybe some species are are doing different things. But I hold that as kind of a spectrum.
Okay. And what is that spectrum all about?
I think in one case, there is a goal to help us spiritually evolve. And that would be the case because we're all interconnected. And therefore, our spiritual evolution might in some way impact others. So if we're all part of the same stream of water, by affecting one whirlpool, you're going to affect the overall stream. So maybe the benevolent beings see it that way, where they want us to evolve selfishly. Now, the darker beings might distort some of these spiritual truths, if you want to call them that, and they might succumb to power and want to lower our evolution, devolve us in some way, where they would want to subjugate us or enslave us because they're disconnected from the broader stream of consciousness, and they are deceived basically into thinking that's good.
So it's all in our mind, because or in our spirit, in our hearts, and our souls.
I would say yes and no, because there is, to me, a reality to what we're in. But then there's the higher reality that we don't always perceive. So there might be a higher aspect of us that is impacted by all of this too.
So in the end, it's all evolutionary, we as humans.
That's how I see it. Because, I mean, going back to the near-death experience, that's been really influential in the way I look at things, because there's so many of these cases where people come back, they had a life review, and they talk about this notion of the evolution of consciousness. And the life review shows that, because you get to observe how you acted, and then you come back in your body potentially through the reincarnation process to have different types of learning experiences. So there seems to be this engine of growth that we're going through, and we have an amnesia to it. So we don't remember if there are past lives. We don't remember that. If there's a broader reality that we're a part of, we seem to have an amnesia to that. So some call it the cosmic game of hide and seek, that we have this perceptual block that we're trying to overcome in order to evolve. And part of the process is encountering evil, if you want to call it that, or encountering trauma, because it gives us a chance to evolve past it and transmute that negativity.
Okay. So are we all about regeneration of one's soul in the end? And in the end, we're all part of the alien phenomena, the near-death phenomena, and the consciousness aspect that really we never die. We just move along to the next lifetime.
I see it that way. And the question that I have, I don't think I have an answer to this, is what can help us in that process? If you want to call it recycling of the water within the stream, what can help us towards something better and more evolved, and what might trap us? And in the book, I talk about the Nag Hammadi scriptures. And these are scriptures that were written 2nd, 3rd, 4th century AD. They were hidden in a jar because they were heretical to the traditional Christian teachings. And they were found in 1945 in a jar in Egypt. And they were translated into English in the late 1970s. So these are relatively new scriptures. And they talk about origin stories for humanity. And it relates to what you're asking, Dave. The brief version is that they talk about one consciousness. And from that one consciousness, individual beings spawned off, one of which was named Sophia. And Sophia apparently had a rogue son named Yaldabaoth in one of the scriptures. And this being created our universe that we're in, the human realm. And the human realm, the beings in it, humans, have a spiritual connection with Sophia. But we live within this realm where we're put into a state of ignorance. So one of the quotes, to paraphrase it, this is again from a long time ago. They say, the rulers kept humanity in a state of confusion and toil so that they would be distracted with the things of the world and wouldn't have time to focus on the Holy Spirit. So there might be, if you take any literalness to that, there might be a force that's trying to suppress our evolution, and we're trying to get past it, and it's ancient.
That's almost biblical.
It really is. Yeah.
So where does
if it's true.
Okay, never mind mainstream religion, but biblically speaking, with a lot of the scripture that is, taking place in the Old Testament, never mind, being mad at everybody and killing everybody in the world. All right. There seems to be correlation between what happened then and what is happening now.
I would agree with you. And I know these are controversial things to talk about, especially those who have a firm religious belief system. But I studied the work of Paul Wallace, the Australian archdeacon, who began to look at the Bible from a different lens and stories around the world from the lens of maybe these were not God, so to speak, but they were God-like beings that were described, who are very similar to what are reported in, many of these alien encounters, whether abductions or other encounters today. So, for example, he, among other researchers, they look at the term Elohim in Genesis of the Bible, which it means God, but it's a plural term. So if you take that term not to mean the one consciousness, but rather a group of advanced beings, the Bible takes on a whole new meaning. So maybe, like these researchers speculate, Adam was the first genetic creation by these more advanced beings in the same way that we genetically modify all sorts of beings today. These are just speculations that it would make sense, but they're also difficult to prove.
That is very true. Very true. We've got about 4 minutes here with you left tonight in a show that has flown on by, which I told you it would, Mark. I made you that promise right before the show. When you're done, what is the message you want to get out to people regarding your books, your theories, and your studies?
I would go back to the life review, the importance of our interconnectivity, and that a large percentage of people see that and experience it in a near-death experience, and it could recontextualize our living on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's super important. But also this notion of spiritual evolution, because in this field of the paranormal, the phenomena themselves are pretty glamorous, and they're super interesting because they're so glamorous. And I'm not saying we shouldn't study them for that reason, but if we get caught up in the glamour, that can be its own distraction from our own spiritual growth. So I think this is a super important phenomenon to study because we want to get to the truth. Those of us who do want to get to the truth, you can't ignore the contact phenomenon. It's a huge part of our existence, no question. And there are lots of questions about it, but we have to try to get to the bottom of it. And if we understand it in that context, rather than getting wrapped up in how cool it is, that, I think we need to search for the truth, and then also keep in mind our own personal spiritual development and not let that lag behind just because we get interested in this topic, which is very important too.
Yeah. And I think you're moving the ball forward. We need more people like you taking it. Look, I enjoy the woo as much as anybody out there, but there has to be logical thinking that surrounds everything that seems a little bit extraordinary regarding that. And at times I don't know if because due to all the podcasts and YouTube channels and radio shows and whatever you want to call it that are out there, I'm wondering if we've diluted the message too much and people aren't getting the proper message, Mark.
It's a big challenge I noticed in my research, and Dave, you probably see this as well. There are so many messages, and it's difficult to discern the truth sometimes, especially if you're not devoting like all of your time to this topic. If you just have a few hours here and there to look at pieces of evidence, it can be difficult to figure out what's real and what's not. And that can dilute the message because maybe some of it's real and some of it is a distraction or some of it is a false memory. That could happen too. So I don't know what the answer is to that. I haven't figured it out myself. I think we need to have as many credible people as possible looking at this to try to distill down the really credible stuff versus the less credible research.
Well, you know what? Do us a favor. Tell everybody where they can find your books once again. We got about a minute.
Sure. My website is my name, markgober.com, markgober.com. And that has all of my info, including my books, but also my 4 books are on Amazon. And the books are available in hard copies, Kindle, and Audible, including the newest book, which comes out on Audible on August 2nd. And also my podcast, it's called Where is My Mind? It features my interviews with many consciousness researchers and experiencers. It's an 8-episode series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major players.
Isn't it fun saying that you got your podcast on Spotify and Apple and all that kind of stuff? I love it for us. I do. I love it for us.
Yeah, I love that this message can get out there to anyone who wants it. And I love hearing from people who have a mainstream background and they hear some of this information and it shifts their life. That's a fun part of all this for me.
All right. I'm going to get you to hold on right there, Mark, as we are going to wrap up hour number 2 and head into hour number 3 after this break. What a night of radio so far here with Mark Gober, markgober.com. We got a busy third hour coming up. Swamp Dwellers with us. We got the Dave 101. Super Duke's out there somewhere, I believe. Shirky Poo's got the news. Hour 3 of Spaced Out Radio returns right after this. All right, we are clear. I haven't heard from my Bigfoot guy yet. Usually he's hopped on. If Mark, if he doesn't show up in the next couple of minutes, you want to stay till the bottom of the hour? Are you good for that?
Yeah.
I'm having fun. I hope you are.
Yeah. Well, you're asking really good questions, so I enjoy this.
I think we just hit on a real important topic there. I would actually like to continue that with you just in regards to the messages and the podcast and everything that's out there. Let me just see if I could get a hold of my Robin's supposed to cover Duke. Oh, shoot. Okay. I totally forgot about that. Son of a gun. Yeah, Robin, I'm going to call Robin here because I would actually like to do another segment with you. Okay. Robin, can you join me at the bottom of the hour? I know you're listening and typing me. Okay, good. I'll send her the link here. Yeah, I want to ask you about that messages stuff there, and then we'll get to Robin McRae at the bottom of the hour to talk a little bit of Bigfoot. I'm going to, because of my voice, I'm going to forego the Dave 101 this week. My voice, I'm not going to make it. I can tell right now I'm not going to make it through. All right, you hold on for a quick second here. Mark, Dirty Filth, you kind of give us an update on what you're drawing there, buddy. And I'll be right back. I got to get a drink of water here.
Maybe you need a lozenge, Dave. Lozenge.
That picture is really coming together. Wow.
So yeah, it's almost done. I just got the last little bit of the street here, and that's pretty much it. A little bit of detail. I gotta go back and add some detail to everything.
I remember at the beginning it was just a little bit of gray at the top.
Yeah, it's like I said, it turns out pretty good in the end.
Wow.
Well, I've just done this stuff forever and I'm just having a lot of fun with it.
So before you start, do you have the full vision, or does it kind of evolve as you're actually doing it?
Well, it depends. Sometimes I actually will draw the entire drawing exactly how I see it in my brain. And then sometimes I'll just take that and I actually have a light table and I'll copy it right off that. I'm like, this is exactly what I see. And it's very rare that I do that because a lot of times I see something in my mind, I put it to paper. It doesn't look like it, what I wanted. But most of the time it's just usually I get an idea, I sketch it out, and then the reason I like watercolor is because I always call it like the lazy man art, even though I shouldn't say that, but it's because the color just kind of you can put it wherever you want. And if you know, like I know where all my lines are going to be. So that's why I kind of say it's like the lazy man's art. But because I know I can put all the water down, it can just look like a complete mess. And every time I do it, since forever, I'm looking at it, I'm putting the watercolor down and I'm thinking to myself, oh, I may have put too much there, not enough. I missed this cloud over here. I got to put in now, stuff like that. And I'm always thinking about it. And it just keeps me on my feet, and I enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun. That's the best way I can explain it. It's something else. It's like a magical trance I go into.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I go to work every day. They're like, what kind of drawing did you do last night, Dirty Filth? I'm like, here you go. I'll show you. Because I was
so
taking a
cool.
picture of it and everything. And I'm lucky to work at a place where my boss actually bought my book, and he bought art off of me. And it's pretty cool. We were friends before I started working with him, so it kind of works out.
Yeah, that works out great. And as you're drawing, are you half listening to the conversation, or how does your focus divide there?
You know what? That's a great question, because most of the time, to be honest, I miss a lot of the conversations because I just all of a sudden get in this zone, and then I hear these bits and pieces, and then I go, oh, geez, that's interesting. I have a notebook on my lap that I'm constantly writing notes on. There were some from tonight that I wrote in here.
Oh my goodness,
yeah,
that is hilarious tonight.
But yeah, so sometimes I got a notepad always on me at all times, and I'm always scribbling notes. So I get into the zone. Basically, Dave, what I was saying, as Mark asked if I was paying attention to the show, like while I'm drawing, when I'm in the zone and everything, and like I do, but at the same time, I'm rambling. Actually, I apologize. Shouldn't have to
Just roll with it, buddy.
Yeah. Anyways, I got a big notebook here, and I keep writing notes, and that's how I get ideas for cartoons. And sometimes they change from the original drawing, which was, oh boy, I can't find it. I apologize. Can't find the drawing, but sometimes I don't even actually draw the drawing. I just see it in my brain, put it right to the paper. It's just how it works. It's a strange machine, to say the least.
All right. We got 18 seconds. Thank you to Dry Toast, Allison, Bart, Worsley, YJ, Dutch Hank, Rex, and Lala for the super chat tonight. Very much appreciate it. We're going to go till the bottom of the hour with Mark Gober. I'm having way too much fun here. Robin McRae comes up after that. Here we go.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We very much appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hi to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Womble. Womble is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. You know what? Sometimes I make a little change in the game plan, and that's what we're doing tonight with my voice not as up to par as it normally is. Normally, I would do a Dave 101 at the bottom, but I honestly don't know if I could get through it without coughing and a lot of breaks in between. And as I get over this cold, no, it is not the vid. No, I just have a sinus cold, and it's affecting my throat. The worst kind of cold you can have in radio. So Mark Gober has graciously extended his part of the interview for another till the bottom of the hour. And then after the bottom of the hour, Robin McRae is going to join us for the Cryptid Report, filling in for Super Duke tonight. Mark has a great book out called An End to Upside Down Contact, UFOs, Aliens, and Spirits, and Why Their Ongoing Interaction with Human Civilization Matters. It can be found at markgober.com or on amazon.com. Mark, thank you for sticking around with us for a little bit longer.
No, thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed this conversation.
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about, we only had a brief minute to do so in the last half hour. And sometimes, you know, the show ends when we still got lots to talk about. So the good part about it is I get to ask you this now, and that is regarding medium being the message. Okay, where we're all trying to get through what is the truth, what is humanity all about, and there over the last decade or so has become an entire genre of podcasts, UFO channels, blogs, vlogs, YouTube channels, BitChute channels, you name it, where people are expressing their opinions and their knowledge on what they feel is going on in the world. And to a lot of people, and I asked you this right before the break, whether or not the message has been diluted because anybody and everybody, including their own dogs, can have a podcast now to get their message out. How do people go about finding out what the true message is if there's so many different messages being labeled at the same time?
It's a challenge for sure. My thought is that if there are platforms with particularly good screening mechanisms where they only talk to certain types of people and the host or the producers have a way of filtering out for all the listeners, I think that's really critical. And then that's magnified by the size of that person's audience. So let's Joe Rogan, for example, when he has a guest on, that is going to amplify that message in a huge way, whereas a smaller show won't have as much of an effect. So I think the really big shows in particular have to have a super strong screening mechanism. But at the same time, you could have a smaller show where they have super high quality guests, and it basically it like supercharges the audience. And then those people are then able to go out and tell other people. But it starts with the content creators to be very responsible with what they're doing.
Well, and that's the big thing because, the one thing that I have noticed with podcasting is everything is broken down now to a minute level. Let's take Bigfoot, for instance. Where you have the group that believes that it's an animal. We're dealing with Gigantopithecus. We're dealing with everything along those lines. Then we got the next people over who believe that there's something supernatural with the being. They're broadcasting about that. Then you have the people who believe that Sasquatch are people too and need to have voting rights. We seem to break things down to whatever seems to suit our fancy, and we're not deviating and listening to any more messages, whether it's about Bigfoot, whether it's about UFOs, ET contact. We're only listening now to what our own opinion is all about. And to me, and I'm curious your thoughts, I find that a little bit dangerous because before podcasting became popular, we would listen to the full messages. We'd get the point and the counterpoint. Whereas today, we don't go for the counterpoint. We only want to support those who have the same opinions as us. And to me, that makes it difficult for us to grow in this genre of gaining knowledge. What's your opinion?
Yeah, well, I see that as well. And it feels like people have shorter and shorter attention spans with media where they want the quick snippet and that's it. And we see this in the world of politics as well. And you can end up just basically going toward the things that you want to hear and then you don't hear anything else. So it's certainly an issue. And our ability to get over that issue might relate to what I would call spiritual growth. Ken Wilber, the philosopher of integral theory, spiritual philosopher, he talks about waking up, cleaning up, and growing up, that these are 3 lines of development. So you could have someone who's highly awakened. Let's say they've achieved a very enlightened state of consciousness. That might be independent of growing up, for example. And let's say growing up is the capacity to acknowledge certain aspects of reality. And my point is that the onus might be on the listeners to grow up to a certain degree, to say, look, I'm not just going to take the snippets. I'm also going to try to hear opposing points of view. And if they don't do that, then they're going to be harmed because their version of the truth will be skewed, and maybe that will negatively affect them in some way. So their incentive, if they want to grow up and spiritually evolve, will be to have a more mature way of taking in content.
Okay. Are we mature enough in today's society to do that?
That is the big question. And maybe some are and others aren't. And maybe for those who are more mature, they will be able to get a greater picture of the truth and it will help them in their life some way. Whereas those who are not able to do it in the same fashion could be punished in some manner. So in the end, it will be evolutionary.
Wow. That makes it even more difficult to even try and find truth if you're only trying for opinion. You know, like when it comes to ET contact, you have the people out there who believe that this is very negative, that this is a detriment to humanity on Earth, and when the aliens get here, they're going to enslave us. They're going to tear us apart, ruin societies, wipe us off of our existence, and they go very, very adamant about those theories. Whereas you get the people out there who will say, no, 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 I had good encounters. I've had good thoughts. I've had nothing horrible happen to me. Then there's the blend in between that I think the majority fall in that category of. But if we're only talking about one aspect of any sort of contact, how do we grow off of that? Yeah. How do we expand our own consciousness, our own brand, our own value?
Well, in the spiritual growth community, one of the themes that often comes up, which relates to your question, is the notion of appreciating paradox, where you have two things that seem to contradict each other, but you can hold them as truths simultaneously. I view that as a form of intellectual maturity that we're going to have to get to, that it's not just one or the other, but it's maybe all of the above with regard to these phenomena. And whether we can get to that maturity or not, I don't know. It might just depend on the individual. Maybe some will, some won't. I think that's what's required.
Okay, let's get to a question from Eugene in Philadelphia here. What do you know of the illusionary veils of spiritual perception?
I would interpret that as, to use the analogy of the whirlpool and the stream, we are the individual whirlpool within the broader stream. The veil of perception would be something that prevents us from perceiving outside of the whirlpool in certain ways. So going back to the near-death experience, you get the brain out of the way, people experience an expanded reality. Sometimes they say they have 360-degree vision, and what they experienced was realer than real when the brain is out of the way. So there's something in our biology that seems to create a veil. And I'm also reminded of some of the studies on DMT, dimethyltryptamine, the psychedelic, which these were studies done by Dr. Rick Strassman at the University of New Mexico, where he used intravenous DMT, which was significant because the body normally produces this substance, but it's decomposed so quickly that people aren't tripping all the time. But when you give it in an IV, people have this artificial trip. And the veil seems to go away there as well. The filter seems to be unlocked and the brain experiences this broader reality, which, by the way, often includes reports of alien abduction, which is super interesting that DMT can bring people to that spiritual dimension as well. So in summary, the way I think about this veil is in our biological suit, the consciousness that inhabits this suit is prevented from perceiving the full reality for some reason.
So that pertains to the question, what is reality?
That's the difficult question. I think it's multifaceted for sure. And we might just perceive, the way I look at it is there is this one reality and we're perceiving different aspects of it. The spiritual teacher, Dr. David Hawkins, described it in a way that I always often go back to this analogy. He said, imagine you have light shooting through a prism. So you end up with a holographic image on the other side, but there's just one source. It's just that light. And he says you can look at it from one angle and then look at it from another angle. And those 2 points might be different points in time in your perception of sequence. But in reality, there's no sequence there. It's just oneness within the hologram, but you perceive it to be moving in time. So maybe it's something like that.
Wow, that is deep. That is deep. Your perception then on the power of ET contact on the human evolutionary scale, in the end, is it good for us that we could learn that we are not alone, not only in our universe, but the entire solar system?
I think it's essential. Just from a conceptual spiritual standpoint, if we're all interconnected beings as part of this oneness, it just seems logical to me that we would want to be able to connect with one another. And if there are tons of species of beings out there, which that appears to be the case, and maybe they're in multiple dimensions, and our society is blind, largely blind to that, it feels like there's just so much missing from our reality that needs to be incorporated. So I view this as essential.
Essential to us moving forward, or essential to our spirituality and consciousness?
It's one of those all of the above things. I think there are many reasons why it's essential. From a spiritual perspective, acknowledging truth to me is always an advancement, and this is part of the truth. But there might also be other benefits of these more advanced beings, especially the benevolent ones. What could we learn from them that could enhance our own spiritual evolution by having more direct contact? I often wonder, especially if we look back at the ancient scriptures and mythologies, if they were really mythologies, maybe they weren't. Maybe these quote unquote gods were just advanced beings. And if they are so much more advanced as they're described in those types of scriptures, it makes me think that there's something we could learn from them.
Well, what message do you need to learn? What would be priority number one for the messages you want moving forward?
Well, I really want to understand why we're here. What are we really doing here? I know there's this concept of evolution that comes up everywhere, and I do believe that, but I don't fundamentally understand the human species and our place in the universe and our real history. And we're just, to me, it feels like as a society, we're walking around as zombies. And I include myself, especially before I opened up to this stuff, just like going on a treadmill, not really thinking about these broader questions. But these are the big questions of how did we even get here? And then what does that imply about what we should be doing in our lives? That's what I want to know.
I think you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, look at all the things we have been convinced of that we need in life. Like you just mentioned, a treadmill.
Yeah.
How dare we think about going outside for a walk? You know what I'm saying? Or into a park or something when we got the treadmill right there. We'll spend $2,500 on a treadmill, but we won't spend $2 in gas to go down to the park to walk the trails. You know, I mean, it seems like you said, we've been blinded a lot to a lot of the happenings that are happening daily right around us. I mean, is society not too far gone on paying attention to what's around them, and more importantly, what's above them?
Yeah. Well, it depends on the person. I have noticed that there is momentum toward an awakening of some sorts. That keeps me optimistic. But then at the same time, I do come across people who I would say are incredibly smart from a traditional intellectual standpoint, who are totally closed off. And it's like no evidence would convince them. So what I find in my work, because what I'm trying to do is provide evidence for people. It's an intellectual path, but that's not the path that seems to, if you want to call it convert people. People are converted by a direct experience, or at least quickly. That's what'll do it. Talk to a UFO experiencer, someone who remembers an abduction, someone who has a near-death experience. You don't have to convince them of anything because they had a reality that is absolutely true to them. I've heard that so many times. So maybe we'll have more and more of those experiences. There does seem to be more of that happening. And with regard to near-death experiences, medical technology has enabled more resuscitations. So there are more people who are being brought back with this knowledge of whatever they experienced. That's significant. And then on the other side, the intellectual path, it's more challenging because, number one, you need the time to be able to go that deep. And then you need the conviction to really want to do it. So I find that it's not as common, but it can be very powerful, like in my own case, because it's been very much an intellectual journey. You get to a point where there's so much evidence that even if I wanted to, I couldn't go back because I can't counter every piece of evidence I've come across. So if I want to be rational and intellectually honest, I have to go in this direction.
That's incredible. 5 minutes to go with you, and I promise you we are saying goodnight to you at the bottom of the hour here. But, I mean, my friend Mark, this has been so much fun and enlightening, not only for all of us, but to, you know, get a little bit of an insight into your own personal awakening from financial guru to a gentleman who is now trying to figure out some of the toughest questions that humanity has. I mean, are you satisfied if you don't get the answers? Or is the drive enough right now to keep you going and understanding that somewhere out there are solutions to these questions?
I feel like I need to keep going. That's the short answer. There still seems to be this passion that puts me forward, is propelling me in this direction. And it's trying to get to the truth, but also trying to help people in that process. So one of the reasons I share my personal story, and in my second book, An End to Upside Down Living, I go into some of the personal details of the 2016 era. The reason I do that, and it's vulnerable for me to just talk about those things, is that there's a commonality to the human experience. So even though I might have a different upbringing than someone else, people often can relate to another person's story because we're all humans. And that seems critical too, to want to share as much as I can, because you never know what's going to shift someone. I mean, I never would have expected listening to a health podcast. I happened to come across an episode with a psychic that I wasn't even looking for, and she didn't know she was going to have that effect on me, for example. So I feel compelled to want to keep learning, because in my life, I have the time and energy and also the training from my professional life and academic life to be able to do a lot of research. I was sort of bred to do this without knowing it at the time. So if I can do that and then try to distill it for people and share it, I'm going to keep doing that as long as I can.
3 minutes to go. I got to know, what does Mark Gober, who's never experienced anything, want to experience?
Okay. I have had an experience, not in terms of contact, that I've spoken about before in one of my books and also in some interviews, with regard to meditation. When I left my job right before the pandemic, I went on 2 silent meditation retreats, week long, no communicating with others, no gesturing, no electronics. And when I came back from one of those retreats, I meditated, and I had an experience that I would call transcendent. It was very short, but I felt this sensation that was beyond what you could call love. It was just so pleasant, and it was so overwhelming that I thought I was going to die. Literally, my body shut it down, but it was not of this world. I didn't feel like there was a being there. Maybe there was, but that's not the sensation. But it was one of those undeniable things that I have had experience. Now, your question, maybe what else would I like to experience? I actually don't have a huge desire. If it happens, it happens. But it's not something I'm seeking out. I think what I'm seeking out more is trying to understand the truth in whatever way it comes about. If it's through an encounter, then so be it. But I'm more interested in the truth.
Oh, come on. Come on. You don't want to have a little alien experience. You don't want to be walking in the forest and see Bigfoot, stub his toe on a rock.
It would be cool, but it's not one of those things like I have a wish list. It's not on the wish list for some reason.
I don't know if I buy that from you after 2.5 hours with you. I don't know if I buy that. I think you would love to see something just for confirmation.
Yeah. It would, I mean, I wouldn't complain if it happened, for sure.
There we go.
But it's not one of those things where I'm saying I need to have that experience.
Right. You do know, though, and I'm sure the more you delve into it and understand, that the longer you study into this field, the higher your chances are of being an experiencer.
Oh yes. Yeah. I've kind of given into that it's probably going to happen to some degree. And when I guess it'll be at the right time if it happens.
All right. We got 1 minute to go with you again. Do us a favor. Tell everybody where they can find your books, your website, your podcast.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. My website is my name, markgober.com. And I have 4 books out. They're also available on Amazon, but they're described on my website. And they are in hard copies, Kindle, and Audible. And my podcast is called Where Is My Mind? It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major players. It's an 8-episode series on near-death experiences, telepathy. I interviewed some of the best scientists in the world on those topics. So you can check it out if you're interested.
Well, I would recommend people do. I don't recommend a lot of podcasts out there, but yours, I would want our listeners to take the time to listen on in, because I really do believe they're going to learn something good, man. And, well deserved on your quest for this knowledge, because we need more people like you, Mark, out there trying to bring logical answers to illogical questions that some of us may not be able to explain properly. So good on you for the hard work that you're doing.
Well, thank you very much, Dave. And thank you for all the incredible work that you're doing to get these messages out there, and to your audience for taking the time to listen and learn about these topics. I think it's people like your audience that are part of the shift. So I appreciate all of you.
All right, coming up next, we say goodnight to Mark Gober. Robin McRae is going to be here momentarily, and we're going to have an extended cryptid report because Robin's just so much fun. Let's do it at the bottom of the hour here on Spaced Out Radio. Stay tuned. Thank you for going extra, Mark.
No,
really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun tonight, man.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
If you ever need a guest, hit me up.
Thank you so much, and I hope you feel better. But again, really enjoyed that conversation. Thank you for having me.
For sure, my man. We'll talk soon.
All right. Yeah, take care.
Take care. Mark Gober, everybody, markgober.com. So we say goodnight to Mark, and we say hello to the lovely Robin McRae, who's being chased around her house by Sasquatch right as we speak.
Crazy.
How you doing?
I'm doing good, actually. I just came outside because the dogs and the bird and everything were chirping and barking, and I thought, forget that, I'll go outside. But they've been really active lately. They've been good. They haven't been, bad. They're just all over right now. They're out there with the dogmen, and the dogmen are near them. And I just saw one walk between a tree. It's just been crazy.
Well, if they want to come on and join the show, we'd be more than happy.
After the show, I'm going to send you a recipe for your cold that I was given from the Bigfoot. And it actually works. It's supposed to help with like fibromyalgia and that kind of thing, but it also works really good on colds. In fact, I have a couple of friends that when they get sick with a head cold or whatever, even when they had pneumonia, they get hold of me and they're like, make it for me, please.
Nice.
So,
Is it cod liver oil?
no, but I might put it in his just for fun. But I love Dave. I wouldn't do that to him. I love the drawing. That's awesome.
That's
awesome. Fantastic. Yeah. Great guest tonight. He was really good. I enjoyed that really very much.
He was incredible.
He really was. I love the openness that he has and the honesty. He had some great thoughts and perspectives. It was really good. One of the better shows, I think.
You know what? They were refreshing. I mean, you got to realize, he is still very virgin when it comes to understanding the experiencer. But
yeah.
But he's not willing to throw out the baby with the bathwater. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, wonderful.
Over the place. And I think that's fantastic.
I do too. I really enjoyed that.
I'm going to blow my nose here. Hold on.
Oh, go right ahead. I had one sneeze out here in the woods the other night. I was like, okay, yeah, I know where you're at.
He asked to bring him a tissue?
No. It's like I said, it's just been really bizarre.
See if we can get that bug there that's hanging out on my pen.
I know. You know what? This is the first time we've had mosquitoes out here, but we're supposed to have this huge storm that we absolutely have not had. But we've had nothing but storms lately, so it's not a bad thing.
What is very awesome is when I went outside of one of my breaks, and because we haven't had a lot of mosquitoes this year. For as damp as our summer and spring were, we haven't had a lot of mosquitoes. And then I got shown why. My resident bat showed up. And he was zooming all over the place. And I'm like, oh, hey, buddy. How you doing?
I love bats.
Oh yeah.
We're under siege with dragonflies, which is a good thing. But I mean, I was amazed. I walked outside today and there had to have been 30 of them, just all in my backyard. I went on the front porch.
Nice.
There's probably another 10. Yeah, I love dragonflies. They're special. So that was nice.
We get a lot of them here too.
Yeah. And the butterflies, just intense amount of butterflies. So you must have a lot of fairies around.
We have a lot of fairy activity around here.
Yeah. Your group's doing good.
I haven't been back there since, oh shit, it's been about 4 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah. The males are off on a hunting trip, but the females are still there and the kids are still there.
Okay.
Just when you go to put your gifts out for them, limit it to like a couple of things, because what happens is when you have a lot all at one time, it overstimulates them. It's just like with a little kid, and they think it's a trap.
Well, we'll talk about this here momentarily. We're going to come back in about 5 seconds. So stay with us.
I will be here.
Rounded third, we're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I want to remind you that if you've missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on tonight with a little bit later than usual Cryptid Report. Sitting in for Super Duke tonight, we have Robin McRae. Let's play some music for her here. Yeah, we sing along every now and again. Robin McRae, the telepathic Sasquatch hunter, is hanging out with us. She's standing out in her backyard in the middle of nowhere, America, having Sasquatch and Dogman run all around her house as we speak right now. I'm not even making this up. It was the first thing she told me. Where's the Sasquatch at from where you are, Robin?
I live on a 2-track dirt road, and my property, I've got these huge trees and bushes down both sides of the property, but right across from me is a 200-acre pine tree farm with a pond, and directly behind me is 65 acres of private hunting land with a pond. So tonight, I'm on the front porch, and as I'm looking at the end of my driveway, right across from my driveway, we have a portal that's there anyway, but there's one that keeps walking between the trees. And then I looked over to the left down a little ways, and I got eye shine from about 10 foot up. And then somebody off to my right just shook the bushes. So
Nice. They're trying to get your attention. If they want to come on the show,
yeah.
Okay, just ask them what their email is. We'll send them a StreamYard link. They can click on their Dogman Fi or their Sasquatch Fi, and they could connect with us. How about that? Or they could just join you on camera. But I'm going to tell you right now, for our radio audience, I will be freaked out if all of a sudden I see this big hairy hand and arm go around Robin's shoulders, to kind of say, "Hey, bub, what's up here? What are we doing here? What are you out in the middle of the night for?" I love it. Robin, you're one of my favorites when it comes to talking everything Sasquatch. I got a question for you, if you don't mind. So my buddy my buddy Mike was heading up the trail about 100, 200 meters from our gifting site that we have here in the British Columbia forest. And right in the middle of the road, there is a red car. Now, he quickly took a picture, stopped his vehicle. He drove over it, not over top of it, but he rolled his vehicle so that way his tires wouldn't hit it. And he got out and took a couple pictures of this little red car that just happened to be lying in the middle of the road. Now, it isn't one of ours. It's one of those old wooden red cars.
Yeah.
It does not come from our gifting site. I mean, it could be anything. It could be, a lot of people are camping in the wilderness. There could be somebody who is driving along and the car falls out the window, or a child accidentally drops it out the window. But he said it didn't feel like that. Okay.
Yeah.
And so how do you judge something like that? A little clue so close to a gifting site.
For me, when I do it kind of a little bit differently because I read energy. So the first thing I'm going to do is not only look at where it's at, look at what's surrounding it, look for prints on the ground, that kind of thing. I'm going to check out if there's any energy on it, whether it's from a Bigfoot, a dogman, or whatever. Everything has an energy signature. Okay. And the picture that you showed me towards the front of the truck, which would be, of that little car, you can feel energy off of it. That would indicate a forest person. Now, normally when you find things like that, they've snagged them from people that were camping, and maybe in the night they grabbed it, or a child dropped it somewhere, or like you said, it could have fallen out of a car, but then they get their hot little hairy hands on it and they can play with it. Most of the time they get it if people are randomly camping, or if they walk down by, where there might be people at campsites or whatever, and they will, pilfer through things and get them, and they hang on to them. Now, we used to put out gifts like that at the house all the time for them, and the kids would take them. And then like 2 or 3 years later, they would show back up again. The toy would.
Okay, so would that be like having it lying right in the middle of the road? Because I do believe, much like you do, that the Sasquatch know when you're entering their territory.
Yeah.
I believe they have the ability to recognize the sound of vehicles, obviously the sight of vehicles, knowing who's going in there for good, who's going in there not paying attention, and who's going in there for nefarious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I just find it very entertaining that, here's Mike heading down the road, the gravel road, about a couple 100 meters before we would park to go to our gifting site, which we do have a plastic red car at. And yet here's a wooden red car sitting in the middle of the road, kind of like, hey, I left this for you.
Personally, I agree with that 110%. The other thing you need to realize is when you are out there, whether you're gifting them or it's a one-time walk in the woods, if they like you and they connect to you, now they're latched onto you. They know every thought you will ever have. They know your intent. They know where you're going before you decide where you're going to go. So knowing that you had that one red plastic car there for them, my personal belief, I've already looked at the photo and I could see parts of that car that had their kind of energy on it. So my belief on that would be that they knew you were coming. You gifted them a red car. They now gifted you a red car. Because with their people, they exchange the gifts. They go a lot by the Native Americans where they barter. So you left them a gift. Now they left it for you. So I personally believe that it was left for you.
Well, I do have the car at my daytime office.
Good.
I do have the car. Do I then, just as a show that I received it, take it to my gifting site this weekend to show them that I received it and now I'm placing it here for you? Or would that be considered insultive?
That, on the ones that I've worked with during my lifetime, that would insult them what you would want to do with that, you have to, again, remember whether you can hear telepathic communication or not, which I think my own belief is that you have gotten it before. You may not have always understood what it was, but you're getting it. And I know you can get it. And you and I have talked about that before. So my own opinion on that is what I would do, what I advise people I work with to do, is you take that home exactly like you did, because that's showing appreciation and gratitude, and you're doing what they wanted you to do with it. And you're going to speak in your mind to them, and you're going to thank them for their kindness. The other thing you want to do is when you're speaking, whether it's for this or anything, you have to be 100% clear, not leave any room for interpretation on what you're saying. Their words don't mean the same as ours. The way we speak, the way we say to do things don't mean the same way theirs do. So you want no room to waver. So like you would per se say, I want to thank you for the gift of the red car. I gave you a red car. You gave me a red car. I hold it dear. Thank you. I come in peace. Or so, you don't have to use those exact words, but something of that nature. So there's no wiggle room. They know what they're going to know what your intent is because they read it on you anyway. But it actually means more if not only are they reading it on you, but you're coming forth with it, because then it leaves less room where they think you're hiding something. They're always waiting for a human to hide something. But no, you keep it with you.
Okay, now do I put it, say, on my panel behind me to show it off to the public, like I'm proud of this? Or do I keep it kind of secretive and just allow it to just sit here and be part of what it is?
I think that when it comes to this and this particular group that you're working with, you have to, again, everything is individualized. They are all individual people. So you're going to go by that individual. I think in your case, I think you're okay to possibly like put it on the shelf behind you. I don't think they're going to have a problem with that because you're proud of it. Okay. And that's not something where you're trying to take the picture of them. You're simply showing what was gifted to you as a gift. As a gift that is yours to do as you see fit.
Now, is it mine or is it there for Mike because Mike's the one who found it?
Number one, they like both of you. Okay, so that's not an issue as far as that goes. They know that you were coming together. They knew you were coming together beforehand. You were the one, I think, that left the gifts before. Because
Yes.
you were the one that left them the gift, and it would then in turn be for you.
Got you. Okay. That makes sense. Okay, with communication, a lot of people, when, in our audience and everything listening in, and I get a lot of questions about this, how do I know if I'm in a Bigfoot area? How do I know if I'm in the right spot? What am I looking for? What should I pay attention to?
Number one, when you go in, and you and I have talked a little bit about this before, you're going to feel that energy. You're going to feel that peace, or you're going to feel fear. The fear is going to mean that you went into an area that they would prefer that you're not in. If you walk in there and all of a sudden you go from a normal, relaxed feeling to peace, you've now entered an area where you're welcome. The next thing you're going to do, look for imprints in the ground. They may not be a footprint that you're going to be able to cast, but some indication that something has traveled through there. The next thing, start with the structures. See if you can find any structures. Doesn't have to be a lot. It could be, they're very subtle, very tiny, whatever. But when you do that, you don't handle the structures. People make that mistake all the time. And just for the record, it ticks them off. They don't like it. That's theirs. They don't want it messed with, but you're welcome to look at it, walk around it. What I tell people, if you go into a heavily structured area, don't be intrusive. It's not that you can't be in that area, but be respectful by staying on the outskirts of it or on a path that might walk through it so that you're not like invading their space. It's not just artwork. It's a form of communication for their people. So just don't touch it. But now, if you go into an area that you know is heavy with food sources and water, you're going to go into that area and you're going to know that at some point in time, they're probably going to filter through there. Stop, sit in one spot. If you're with somebody, then talk, laugh. what I found has been really helpful, and I just did this when I was in Michigan filming, was we were out in the woods and it was late and the bugs were terrible. And two of the guys got out and were walking through the woods. And I was like, forget it. I'm not going out there and being eaten alive. I sat in the truck. I forgot my Tibetan singing bowl. I went on YouTube and got a video of one playing, rolled the window down and played it. And I had two that came in right away. So you don't have to chase them. There's ways that you can do it to bring them to you. They like to be in control. They like to know that they're making all the decisions, because quite honestly, they're going to be the ones making the decisions anyway. And at the end of the day, even if it takes longer, you want positive contact, because that will get you a lifelong contact. Negative contact will cut it short and end in a bad way.
Okay, so it's all about intention.
Yeah.
It's not so much the location. It's about the. Okay, how about for you? Tell us about your latest experiences.
With the Bigfoots or the ETs?
Let's say Bigfoots. Let's stick with Bigfoots tonight.
Okay. Well, last night, perfect example. I mean, it's always active here. We know that. I mean, that's just kind of a given anymore. I was just in Michigan filming, and we got some really great activity. We got out in the woods. I had the night vision, turned around to my left, and like 15 feet, 20 feet from me was one sitting down. Like, I actually watched its eyelashes moving. The night vision I have doesn't just show a black shadow. Like, it's like you literally can see them. I could see the hair on its chest. This particular one had sparse hair on his chest, so I could watch him breathe. Eyelashes were, the eyes were opening and closing, and he was just kind of like sitting there thinking, I'm not going to move. She won't notice me. And then I turned around, and there was one that was mind speaking to me. So I was letting the producer and a couple other people that were there, this is what his name is. This is where he's at. His family's all around, is what he had said. I said, approach him. So they did. Of course, they're extremely wonderful researchers. They didn't really need my help, but they went towards him. And of course, he walked up and they heard him. So it was really nice that they were able to experience what I already knew was there. And then I turned around, and I'm like, this looks like a stomach or a chest. And I look up, and here's this other one. He was like 10 foot tall. Obviously, he was cloaked. I couldn't see him with my naked eye, where the first one I could. This one I couldn't see with my naked eye, but on the night vision, I could see him excessively clear. He was closer than the other one. But we learned something really, what I thought was important, is when you use thermocams, lots of researchers, I don't own one, but lots of researchers go out and they use the thermocams because they think they can get that heat signature, and that's going to be helpful. I was one of those people, even though I didn't use them or have them. When I do healing work on them, which I've talked to you about that too. I do healing on them. They radiate an awful lot of energy. It's very powerful. It's much higher than ours. And I can work through the energy to heal them, but sometimes, like if I'm working on a lot of them or they're really bad and I just want to get right down to it, I'll tell them to pull that energy back, and what they refer to it as a shield. And they're like, okay, we'll drop the shield. Never thought anything more about it. I get to Michigan, and the first one that I saw with my eyes, as well as in the night vision, one of the woman that owned the property put the night vision on him and saw absolutely nothing. And I said, I know what I'm seeing. I've seen these guys 100 times. Like, I'm not stupid. I know what this is. Like, it's that clear. And she said, I know, but I can't get anything on it. But yet when I saw the other one that was cloaked and I accidentally turned over and the night vision was on it, I could see him perfectly fine. He showed up on thermal. So I asked them, I said, I want to know how you did that. And they said, we just leave the shield up. The thermal cam won't penetrate it. Your equipment won't work through it. So if they have that shield up, your thermal camera is no good. And I never would have thought that. Like, when they talked to me about the shield the first time, I don't use thermal cameras. I don't have one. So it's not something I thought about that would be affected by it. But I found out in Michigan, it absolutely affects it. So when we got home, Pat and I asked several different Bigfoots, about it. And we got the same answer from everyone. If they push their energy out stronger than what it normally is to create that shield, your thermal camera will have no effect.
Is it a good idea to try and call them in to try and create that content or that contact?
I personally don't believe in the whoop calls, only because when they do that, it's a form of communication to each other. We may be able to imitate or somewhat try to imitate them. However, we really don't know what they're saying, and each clan can be a little different. So what you could be saying to them could be offensive. I mean, I've done them a couple times. They're fun to see, to try to see if you can imitate it. But to actually go out in the woods and do them, I, as a rule, do not. If you want to, what I tell people, what I do when I walk into the woods, I will either verbally or in my mind, generally the mind will carry out farther. And I'll say to them, I'm here in peace. I wish you no harm. If you want to communicate with me or come near me, as long as you come in peace, you are welcome. If you don't want me here, simply tell me you don't want me here. And I have much better luck. I just don't play a lot of the games with them. But, these whoop calls, and they're fun to do. I'm not going to lie. They are. And I don't discredit anybody that's doing them. Personally, for me, I won't do those out in the woods just because it's not out of fear. It's out of respect. We don't know what each whoop call means. They are signaling each other. That's why they do them. So now you're interfering with what they're doing, and you don't know what that communication is supposed to mean. You could say something the wrong way, thinking you're being kind or just trying to get their attention. It comes down to, do you want the positive contact or do you want the negative? If you're saying the wrong thing, and they're going to come in all right, but they're going to be mad. And it's not even about physical fear. It's about insulting. It's about respect. So if you want ongoing contact that will only enhance throughout the years, which all this stuff is a progression. None of us know it all. But my experience has taught me that you don't do it that way. You work for respect from them if you want respect back.
And that's probably where we got to wrap it up here, Robin, tonight on Spaced Out Radios. We got about 30 seconds left. Let everybody know where they could get a hold of you, your Sasquatch, and find out more information.
Sure. You can email me at rlynne and then a period, forestpeople@gmail.com. So it's arlyn.forestpeople@gmail.com. Or on Facebook, I'm under Robin Haynes, Haynes, McRae. If you do just the Robin McRae, I'll never get it.
Well, there you go. We love you around here.
I love you too.
And it's always a special time. And thank you to Super Duke from World Bigfoot Radio for skipping on out tonight, so that way we could have some fun with you. And it's always a pleasure. And, you just make it worthwhile. And I know we skipped the news. I know we skipped Swamp Dweller, but tonight was worth it. And this is why I love it. This is why I have control of the show, because I can kind of do what I want sometimes, kind of. But thank you, Robin McRae. You're amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. I love you, Dave. Bye-bye.
Love you too. We want to say thank you as well to Mark Gober for coming on in and joining us for a great show tonight as well. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAB, Facebook, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
we're watching.
We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo Train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night. All right.
Hey, sweetie.
Robin, tell me your email once again, because I got a couple people asking.
Okay. It's RLYN is in Nancy, N is in Nancy again, and then an E, and then a period, and then FOREST.
Forest people.
Yep, forcepeople@gmail.com.
All right. There we go.
And I will send you over that recipe for them for your cold.
All right. And you don't have a YouTube channel, do you?
I don't have a YouTube. Everybody asks me that. I have one. I just have never used it. Like once in a while, I think there's something on it now, but I didn't put it there. So, but they can find me over by Duke's. But I do have a YouTube channel. If they wanted to put something on the YouTube channel, it would go on there. I do have it. I've never set it up. There is, I think, 1 or 2 videos.
Yep.
But
gotta watch out for that Super Duke. Gotta watch out for that Super Duke. He is dangerous.
Well, he was one unhappy Super Duke when he found out that the woods were on fire by him, and I guess the forestry said it was a lightning bolt. The Bigfoot said it wasn't. They gave me descriptions of the men and the trucks and everything.
Ah, damn it. Yeah, we are in that time of year.
Well, they're doing good. Everybody's safe. They crossed, they went to where it was safe for them, and they had one of the little kids that got a lot of smoke, but they said he didn't even need healing, that he was fine. So they'll be okay.
Right on.
We get protective of them when we love them.
I hear you there. I hear you there. All right, my dear.
That truck's for you, so I'd hang on to it. Show it off.
I will. I will totally do that.
You could go to our store, spacedoutradio.com, on our website. Get yourself some.
There we go. Let's close that out. We don't need that. Right on. Right on.
And you get hold of me if you need me, but I'm going to type up that thing and send it over on your messenger.
Sounds good, my beautiful friend.
Okay. Love you.
Love you too, my dear. You take care.
Bye.
Bye. Robin McRae, everybody. How awesome is she? Good show for us tonight. Good show for us tonight. I'm okay with that one. I'm okay with that one. Do.
We're watching.
Where are we here? All right. You guys have a good night? Have you guys had a good night? Dave's hitting buttons. That's right. Careful. Dave is hitting buttons. Uh-huh. What am I supposed to do? I hit buttons. I will hit buttons. All right. I am feeling better, but just this throat thing. Don't like this throat thing. Fast Hemi, how you doing, man? Nice to see you. Black Dragon, do that. I am on the gluten-free, extra strong Fisherman's Friends lozenges of taste of really bad licorice. Oh, but they work. I've never got a flu shot, Eugene. I shouldn't say that. I've only ever got a flu shot once. And my cousin, who's a doctor, he gives them out, and I've never been more sick in my life than the 1 year I got a flu shot. And that was in 1999, and I've never got one since. I get sick no matter what twice a year, once in the summer, once in the winter, and that's it. So this is my summertime. This is usual. I'm not worried about it. Bomber, take hot sauce. Shoot hot sauce. Clear your lungs right up. Twice a day. And if you need it, 3. Once at morning, once at night. And if you need a chaser in the middle, you do it. Hello there, gorgeous Rose Demaray. Abrazilla Daily, welcome to SOR chat. What if you have acid reflux? What could you take other than hot sauce? Naturopath. Go to a naturopath and get capsicum pills. They're not as hot, and they still will release the phlegm from your lungs. Thank you, Dennis Zuniga. There we be. Hi, gorgeous Kim Jellin. How are you? Mystics Walk. How you doing? Yeah. Evan Walters, that's until you pop a hemorrhoid from pushing too hard. Just saying. Oh, I will get to bed, Nell. I will get to bed soon. Thank you, Bart Viken. I have a bug on my forehead. I can totally feel it. No. It flew away. Don't you hate people like this, Raven here? I eat cake for breakfast every day and it keeps me healthy. Damn you, Raven McMinn. Damn you. I look at a cake and I gain like 2 pounds. Yeah, where did my fan go? Oh, there it is. I'll have to try that tomorrow. I'm going to have to try that tomorrow. Tarzan, what's happening? Welcome to SOR chat. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go to the little boy's room. I'll be right back. You people in your cake talk. All right. Sorry about that. What do we got going on? All right. Go this way. Go this way. Be with you in a second. There we go. Start transferring this. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Get out of there. All right, I'm back. I am back. Oh, look at Pay Parker. Hi, Dave. Why are you so freaking cute? I hope we can cross paths someday. I would. Well, thank you. I am freaking cute. I am. My mom still tells me that. Not really, but it's one of those things I like to laugh about. Dave's cuddly. Dave is cuddly. Dave's also lost some weight recently due to being sick. Dave's actually feeling pretty good. Until he spills his iced tea all over him like a child. My goodness. Who does that? Let's see what's trending right now. Vancouver. Why is Vancouver trending on Twitter? Mm-hmm. No idea why. Well, if you're looking to meet Dave, itchy ear. May 19th to 21st, 2023, you can come to our Las Vegas party. We're going to be putting up details about that very, very soon and go from there. So mark those dates, May 19th to 21st, 2023, Las Vegas, Nevada. We'll tell you the location. We'll tell you everything. One file done. Mm-hmm. What a fun night. What a fun night. Turn this computer off. Shut down. Hey, it's the gorgeous Pinzer Flactum. Been a while since you've been here. What do I think of the new Arrow? Well, we're going to wait and see. Let's see how transparent they really are. That's the key. How transparent are they? What kind of transparency are they going to provide? That's the key. What kind of transparency will they provide? That one's done. Let's go to number 3 now. Upload. Hide. Let's go here for a second for you all. See what's happening in Africa. Oh, the oryx are back. Look at the oryx. This may be my favorite. One of my favorites. Look how gorgeous they are. Just their coloring along with those amazing horns. What a gorgeous animal. Seriously. What a gorgeous animal. Oh, look at that one. Had a little sip of vodka with the water there. That's dried out pretty quick. They're going to have to pour more water in there. All right, let's see what else we got out here in YouTube Live. I'm going like this. Let's go to Rosie's Pan. See what's happening there. Nothing. All right, let's go down here. Let's go to Tau. Oh, they're scanning. This could be good. Or boring. Boy, that water's drying up. Holy cow. Oh, what do we got over here? What do we got? Nothing. Looks like Mars. Right over here. Looks like Mars. Duck. Nothing happening there. Scrolling down. Check out this watering hole. We got zebras. Look at all the zebras coming in. Oh, we got one little springbok over here. Zebra 4. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What the heck is that over there? I love the zebras, but they're boring. Where are we going next? Let's go to Tembe. See what's happening here. Well, we're zooming in. The hell are we zooming in on? Boy, that watering hole's gone down too. Nothing good there either. Odwell. Well, we are done for the night. Hanging on out. I got to get to bed. I got to work in the morning. And big thank you to all of Lala, Rex, Dutch Hank, YJ, Worsley, Bort, Allison, and Dry Toast for the amazing super chats. Tomorrow night on the show, Bettina Moss is going to join us. We're going to talk a little Dog Man. So that's going to be fun. And we're going to have a good one tomorrow night. So make sure you tune on in, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. We'll talk to you soon, everyone. Bye.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
You need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.